Yan Tianzhao sneered. Ling Han, I'll leave that thing in your hands and take it back in the future. You still have a future? Ling Han's killing intent erupted, charging right out. You'll die today. Haha. You're talking a fool's talk? Yan Tianzhao counterattacked, yet immediately let out a cry in surprise. You actually reached the 8th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier? He snorted again. That was still infinitely far from the flower blossom tier. Show, the people that entered the mystery realm appeared one by one. Yu Kuan-Luan, Bai He-shun, and other well-known figures from on the older generation's prodigy roll all crossed into the flower blossom tier. They spurred with long accumulation, finally crossing the most arduous step with the mystery realm's help. Entering the flower blossom tier meant transcending the mortal body, so every one of them was soared with confidence, an ineffable vigor. They also looked at Ling Han. Previously, when the Jiang family looked for a groom, they were all defeated by Ling Han and Yan Tianzhao. Now that they crossed into the flower blossom tier, it was another shuffle of the cards. Especially Ling Han that hadn't crossed into the flower blossom tier, having no qualifications to be placed on par with them at all. Small tower. Give me a power boost, Ling Han said inwardly. Although power boosting at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier would be the most profitable, he only had one thought now, and that was to kill Yan Tianzhao, ending the karma that he sowed. Hong, Ling Han's presence skyrocketed, instantly broke through to the flower blossom tier, and then charged all the way up to the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier. All the flower blossom tier elites casted a sidelong glance towards Ling Han. What happened? How was it possible that his tier instantly underwent such a terrifying change? Especially Yu Kuan-Luan, who was originally filled with confidence, wanting to battle Ling Han to wash away the humiliation of him retreating without a fight. With this a rude awakening, the gloominess in his heart could be imagined. Yan Tianzhao's expression instinctively turned stern. Ling Han's battle prowess was too strong, and he'd experienced it before. Under the circumstances that he was ahead in tier, the two were tied, but now Ling Han's tier was advantageous, and not just by a bit. This fight was definitely going to be hard. Die! Ling Han swung his sword, and Hong 10 flashes of sword chi streaked. Yan Tianzhao struck back. His control of power reached the acme of perfection and could utilize 1%'s power as 10%'s power. After all, he could be seen as a special type of god, and couldn't possibly be ordinary. However, Ling Han was way too extraordinary. As the demon birth sword came slashing, the power of it was frightening, and the dazzling sword light enveloped him completely. On top of the absolute advantage in power, he fell into a disadvantageous position. Haha, you only forcibly increased your power to the flower blossom tier, and aren't truly at the flower blossom tier. Yan Tianzhao was unquestionably sharp, immediately seeing through Ling Han's weak point. What was the most powerful about the flower blossom tier beings? They could invoke heaven and earth's spiritual chi in the surroundings to strengthen themselves and turn 1-fold's attack into 10-fold, and even 100-fold. Ling Han only possessed the power of the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier, and couldn't utilize heaven and earth's spiritual chi. This was the shortcoming of his tier. However, the difference of each small tier in the flower blossom tier was a great gap in power. So the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier was enough to make up for 10 times and even 100 times the amplification effect of heaven and earth's spiritual chi, allowing Ling Han to still have the advantage. However, such an advantage wasn't as obvious as the 8th layer against the 1st layer. It was at most the 2nd layer against the 1st layer. Yan Tianzhao was fearless, exchanging blows with Ling Han. His grasp over power was too powerful, soon stabilizing the situation. However, with the sharpness of the demon birth sword, he still didn't dare to parry it head-on, remaining at a disadvantage. This already made the flower blossom tier elites looking pained in the jaws. These two people's battle prowess was at least flower blossom tier 6 stars, suppressing many veteran flower blossom tier warriors. Ling Han, you can't possibly kill me. Just stop and keep your life. When the time comes, I'll find you. Yan Tianzhao laughed loudly. What he meant by time was naturally when he crossed into the shattering void tier, having the qualification to shatter the void to become God. When he got the coordinates and returned to the great Brahmas, he'd be able to open the god's treasure trove discovered by Heavenly River King. There won't be a future. You must die today, Ling Han said coldly. He had been accumulating strength, and now Mysterious 3000 was ready. With a sword thrust, it started turning into 1,000 flashes of sword light. Yan Tianzhao's expression changed drastically. This strike was too powerful and he didn't dare to parry it head-on, immediately turning away to run. Flower blossom tear creatures could fly, so he naturally flew into the sky and said, Ling Han, just you wait. No need to wait. Ling Han sheathed his sword and made a posture of drawing a bow. There was clearly no bow in his hand, but an arrow appeared out of thin air, formed exactly by heaven and earth's spiritual qi. He activated the Eye of Truth and glanced at Yan Tianzhao's weak point. Shio! A chilling flash of light shot out, ridiculously fast. Ah! Yan Tianzhao screamed tragically. His left rib was shot. Green blood splattered, looking extremely strange. The left rib was his vulnerable spot, and was penetrated by the arrow formed by spiritual qi. It instantly made the origin power in his body pour out and his figure staggered, sliding down from the sky. Ling Han chased wielding his sword, and when Yan Tianzhao fell down, he unleashed another Mysterious 3000. Fear flickered in Yan Tianzhao's eyes. At this moment he truly felt that death was approaching. He didn't want to die, since he acquired a god's memory and had a 90% grasp of becoming a god in the future. Moreover, he still hadn't executed many maneuvers, and if he fought a life-and-death battle with Ling Han, it was uncertain who would emerge as the victor. But now all was too late. 1,000 sword lights came piercing. It was Ling Han's strongest killer move. Yan Tianzhao's vulnerable spot was injured, and falling from the sky, he had no way to evade. Under his survival instinct, he formed a seal with his hands and fired out a bunch of green nets, intertwining in front of him, stopping Ling Han as much as possible. Pu, piu, 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 sword lights were like rain, instantly tearing apart the green nets. At least 500 sword lights poured down on Yan Tianzhao's body as minced meat flew into the air continuously, turning him into a skeleton. Tang tang tang, Yan Tianzhao stepped back as guts and other internal organs slid out. A sword mark also appeared on his head, showing a deep wound. Everyone shook their heads. Yan Tianzhao's head was already crushed and he was struggling at death's door. He would die at most in a few more breaths. Yan Tianzhao looked startlingly at Ling Han. His eyes already fell out, and now 2 black holes remained, particularly terrifying. He still couldn't believe that underestimating an enemy, or rather simply not wanting to fight with Ling Han head-on, would actually doom him eternally. When enemies met face-to-face on a narrow path, the courageous one, he even forgot such a simple thing. Ha 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 ha. Ling Han, now that I'm dead, don't think about getting off easily. He focused his mind and said loudly. This man received Zhang family's key and opened Sagittarius Palace, which is related to a god's treasure trove. A hidden treasure even gods would be stirred by. And he also has a treasure tool that can accommodate. Pooh! Ling Han's sword pierced through, thoroughly ending his life. Nevertheless, the seed had been sowed. Ling Han's gaze swept by, and he saw that countless people looked at him with eyes burning with desire, wishing they could devour him alive. God's treasure trove. Ling Han was fearless. He didn't refute it because when involving things like treasure, many people would rather believe it existed. Moreover, a man's words were good when death was near, so Yan Tianzhao's words were quite persuasive. His gaze swept by, and seeing Wen Yijian, he immediately waved and said, Junior Brother 1. Pooh, quite a few people spurted out, why did Ling Han call Wen Yijian Junior Brother? The two were completely unrelated, right? Wen Yijian was also slightly startled, and said, Not sure why Master Ling calls me Junior Brother? You and I both acquired the legacy of the 12 palaces. Of course we're fellow brothers. Ling Han laughed loudly. He had to drag Wen Yijian down to share some of his burden. He obviously didn't fear these flower blossom tier warriors, but if some spiritual infant tier ones came, it would be hard to deal with. Moreover, should the news spread, maybe shattering void tier elites would cross over regions no matter the cost? Then even if he had the Black Tower's protection, would he hide in a shell for his entire life? When Yi Jian was won from East Region and ran over to North Region for gains, so he had to share some of the pressure for him. He couldn't always be the one to take the burden, right? Hee hee. Master Ling sure loves telling jokes. When Yi Jian guffawed, looking like arguing was beneath him, yet thought that if they were fellow brothers, he would be the senior one. Ling Han snickered and said, "Junior brother when acquired the Scorpio Palace's legacy. Do you dare make a heart's vow and bet to say that I'm wrong?" A heart's vow was a vow to one's martial arts principles, and if this were faked, one wouldn't get struck by thunder, but it would heavily influence one's martial arts progression. It definitely couldn't be made recklessly. In the depths of Wen Yijian's eyes was a shred of annoyance, but his expression was extremely calm as he said indifferently, "Why should I make a heart's vow senseless?" Ling Han said no more, simply sweeping past everyone and said, "Me and Junior Brother One are kings amongst martial artists and have both crossed into the Flower Blossom tier. On top of this Flower Blossom tier King tier puppet, he summoned the rock spirit. If you want, come battle. Let's see how many people will spill their blood across the skies and leave their lives here." The corner of Wen Yijian's mouth twitched. Why did Ling Han include him again? This person didn't have ears at all and didn't listen to him speak or something. He was even more shocked. Receiving great benefits at the Scorpio Palace, he finally crossed into the Flower Blossom tier, but also acquired a mystic art which could hide his cultivation, which still looked like the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. So how did Ling Han see through with a single glance? What the hell of a mystic art was this? Don't care so much. Take the two of them down. The Flower Blossom tier cultivators exchanged their opinions. Whether it was the legacy of the 12 palaces or the god's treasure trove, both were of great significance. They would rather mistakenly kill and definitely not miss it. Not going to play with you North Region lunatics. When Yi Jian shot up abruptly, and the presence of the Flower Blossom tier spread out without reservation. With a step down was a flash of divine light, which burst forth as he left soaring through the sky. Want to leave? Immediately, dozens of attacks came flying. Even if Wen Yijian's battle prowess was exceptional, he'd just broken through after all. He couldn't possibly resist against such a bombardment of attacks, and was forced to land. Junior Brother One, let's fight shoulder to shoulder. Ling Han laughed loudly. Wen Yijian was almost had a wry nose from anger. He could have left quietly, getting rich secretly, but Ling Han actually exposed him. Now he was caught in a dangerous situation, making him extremely gloomy. Ling Han, when did I offend you? Why do you have to mess with me like this? He said coldly. Not even calling him Master Ling, Ling Han laughed and said justifiably, Junior Brother One, we're a family, of course we should pull together at a time like this. Don't worry, I'll protect you. Protect your sister. I could have calmly left with a swagger. When Yi Jian grimaced as the situation in front of his eyes obviously wouldn't be as he wished. Fortunately, the spiritual infant tier warriors earlier had already gone back, or else, if those elites intervened, he would only be able to submit. Now he could fight it out and break through the tight encirclement. Ling Han, this debt, I'll definitely make you pay for it, he swore as he stood together with Ling Han. The two in addition to the rock spirit formed a corner back to back. Ha, that'll be in the future, Ling Han said unconcernedly. Lu Yutong and the others were tactful and didn't go forward. If they went up now, not only would they not be able to help Ling Han, they'd instead become a burden, making them feel unpleasant inside. Despite their fast progression speed, even fighting into North Region's prodigy role, they still couldn't share part of Ling Han's worries and burdens. Come, who wants the treasure? Judd attack. Ling Han laughed loudly. But you guys have to think clearly, I'm also a heaven-grade alchemist. If you hurt single hair of mine, be careful lest the entire alchemist society will give you all a hard time. The faces of all the Flower Blossom tiers elites twitched, thinking that Ling Han was exceedingly courageous, and at the same time a bit rascally. Fighting against the masses alone, this was obviously exceedingly courageous. However, he also put out his identity of a heaven-grade alchemist to threaten them, making them hold back when they attacked. Wasn't this extremely rascally? This wasn't a bit at all like an 18-year-old youngster, but rather mature and slick, just like an old fox. Take them down. Do your best not to hurt them. The Flower Blossom Tier warriors reached a consensus. A heaven-grade alchemist's capacity was too heavy. Killing one secretly was all right, but killing Ling Han in public, that would definitely spread to the entire world. Whoever made the move would definitely be pushed out by the sect as a scapegoat to settle the fury of the world's alchemists. Oh, I didn't get the treasure, but I'd still have to give up my life for it. Who would do such a thing? Thus, everyone hoped that someone else would kill Ling Han accidentally, but they themselves definitely wouldn't do it. Go! Over 20 Flower Blossom Tier cultivators attacked together, their momentum vast and mighty. Ling Han, Wen Jian, and the rock spirit roared, swinging their swords and pulling their fists, charging up one after another. Watching on the side, Hunyo stamped her feet, but it was currently a chaotic fight, and any random gust of wind was at Flower Blossom Tier, filling the entire fray. No matter how fast she was, it was impossible to avoid the remaining shock waves of so many attacks. Going in head-on would only result in injury. Her battle instincts were too scary, immediately figuring out such a conclusion, which was why she didn't charge up hot-headedly. Nyo wants to become stronger. Nyo wants to become stronger. The little grill yelled loudly. Something inside her seemed to awaken, emitting a light hint of divine might. Mortals couldn't possibly sense it as it shot to the heavens, even breaking through this world. Ling Han now had the power of the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom Tier, and on top of the former Heaven Tier's divine sense, he could still allocate Heaven and Earth's spirit chi. However, the amount was relatively smaller, so his actual cultivation was equivalent to the 3rd layer of the Flower Blossom Tier. In addition to the various arts he grasped, his battle prowess rocketed to 10 stars, surpassing 7 stars. This was mainly because his power was forcibly boosted. Otherwise, if he truly crossed into the Flower Blossom Tier, then even at 1st layer Flower Blossom Tier, his battle prowess could also reach 10 stars. However, it was also enough now, since 9 of his enemies had just completed their breakthrough, such as Yukuan Luan, Bai Hishan, and other old figures on the prodigy roll. How many stars of battle prowess could they possibly have at that moment? Besides, Ao Feng and other even older figures of the prodigy roll had also broken through not long ago, about 1 or 2 years ago, and at most 10 years, but what layer of the Flower Blossom Tier could they have reached in 10 years? The fight against the Golden Blood Demonic Ape back then, there were also over 20 Flower Blossom Tier warriors, even ones at the 9th layer, but weren't they still knocked about in all directions? By Ling Han's side was Wen Jian and the Rock Spirit. Wen Jian was very strong, and when he was still at the spiritual pedestal tier, he easily defeated Yang Junhan. Now that he crossed into the Flower Blossom Tier, he also displayed an invincible bearing. He could at least fight 10 by himself. The Rock Spirit was even scarier, more kick-ass than King Tier beasts in the same tier, because it was a spirit of the 5 elements, a higher-level lifeform. The 3 people joining hands actually suppressed over 20 Flower Blossom Tier opponents. Great! Once the fight started, Wen Jian forgot about everything and swung his sword as if he was crazy, the sword's momentum terrifying. He opened up his left hand and formed a strange seal. Since you guys want the mystic arts of the 12 palaces so desperately, then I'll let you guys experience it firsthand. He fired out his left hand. Instantly, a massive dark scorpion appeared, snipping at people with its large pincers. At the same time, it raised its stinger, firing continuously. This scorpion emitted a terrifying presence. Even Ling Han somewhat palpitated with fear. Scorpio Palace's mystical power? The 3 originally had the advantage, and in addition to Wen Jian's sudden demonstration of power, they instantly suppressed everyone, making them scurry away while covering their heads. Yang Jun, Hao, and the others stared agape. They were also this generation's prodigies? Look at Wen Jian, who was only 18, but his battle prowess crushed a whole bunch of old prodigies. With this comparison, did they still have the face to call themselves prodigies? Ling Han probably forcibly increased his power with a medicinal pill. He definitely isn't at the Flower Blossom Tier. Yes, just like that Flower Blossom Tier guy said earlier, Ling Han's actual power is only at the second or the third layer of the flower blossom tier. But it's truly freakish. It seems his current battle prowess is at least 10 stars, right? Not only him, Wen Yijian is no less frightening than Ling Han. The onlookers discussed animatedly, thinking that if spiritual infant tier warriors didn't come, there truly weren't many flower blossom tier ones that could suppress Ling Han and Wen Yijian. These were exceptional geniuses, strong to the point that surpassed the extent of understanding of normal people. Ao Feng and the other flower blossom tier warriors began to collapse. They actually all carried the treasures granted by spiritual infant tier seniors. Some were spirit talismans and some were law decrees, but they used up most of them venturing inside the mystery realm earlier, and only a few people had any remaining. Compelled by circumstances, they unleashed these treasures one after another. They didn't want to carry the charge of murdering a heaven-grade alchemist, but also didn't want to be crowned with the foul reputation of being defeated by 2 juniors. They had to take the 2 down. Hong. A law decree rose up, immediately burning into ash in the sky, and then a lofty squared mountain appeared out of the blaze. It was all black and emitted a ceaseless power of the earth. Wen Yijian's body instantly stopped, almost falling down to the ground. The power of the spiritual infant tier was too strong. Even if it was only an attack sealed inside a law decree, it was still extremely terrifying. A mere spiritual infant tier law decree. Wen Yijian searched with his hand and took out a conch. Since you guys want to play, I'll play with you guys. He blew the conch. Woo! The ancient sounds of bugle call echoed, calling upon heaven and earth. Blue characters flew out of the horn, forming an unusual spirit. Its upper body was man, and its lower body was a fish tail. It held a trident in hand and leashed out fiercely at the black mountain in the sky. Pong! The black mountain instantly exploded. Rubble shot out, frightening people out of their senses. Those were spiritual infant tier attacks. Even a fragment could instantly kill spiritual pedestal tier cultivators. Fortunately, under the merman's thrust, the black mountain lost its might, and the shards that flew out actually had no destructive power, making everyone alarmed in vain. That thing's so awesome! Ling Han's gaze shone with curiosity as he said, Junior brother Wen, lend me it for a few days to play with? Wen Yijian rolled his eyes and hurriedly put away the conch. In your dreams! Ling Han laughed and said, Junior brother Wen, keep it up. Kill them all. Wen Yijian didn't utter a word. Only he knew that this conch was something he'd acquired by chance. It could only be used once a month, and if it was used again within 30 days, his life force would be the price for its activation. Activating it once was 10 years, twice was 100 years. Although he advanced into the flower blossom tier, he couldn't blow it that many times. However, the other people didn't know it, and seeing their law decrees easily neutralized, what other ways were there to suppress these 2 youngsters? We're not fighting anymore, they said one after another. If they kept fighting, they would only embarrass themselves. They had to leave quickly and request spiritual infant tier elites to suppress these 2 juniors. You could fend off law decrees, but you'd have no way against the real deal, right? Not fighting. Ling Han glanced at everyone. You guys are the ones who picked the fight, and now you guys say to stop the fight. Are you guys trying to make fun of me and Junior brother Wen? SHT. Why did he include me again? Wen Yijian scorned inwardly, but he was also an extremely proud person. Being attacked from all sides by these people, he was obviously annoyed as well, so he let Ling Han mess around. What does Master Ling want? Ao Feng opened up. Ling Han smiled coldly and said, You guys attacked me, a heaven-grade alchemist, for no reason, frightening me. This needs compensation. And my friends inside the mystery realm, you guys intimidated them and want to slip away just like that. Lu Yutong and the others were touched. So Ling Han knew. Ao Feng and the other flower blossom tier elites were extremely gloomy. They'd certainly wanted to take down Lu Yutong and the others to threaten Ling Han, but they were stopped by the formation spirit before doing so. Now they had to pay compensation? Don't compensate, then we'll keep fighting, Ling Han said, quickly adapting. Sure, I can't keep you all here, but 1 or 2 is doable. I'll see who's an eyesore and says no to me first, and when the time comes, I'll make him stay. cutting off his head to use as a bowl for wine. This threat was very uncivilized yet also extremely real, making Ao Feng and the others speechless. How do we compensate? Ao Feng said, clenching his teeth. Wanting you cocky people to offer an apology is probably impossible, and also has no meaning. Who doesn't know that one might say sorry from one's mouth, but inwardly says? Ling Han thought momentarily and said, pay origin crystals, 1,000 per person. 1,000? Everyone sighed in relief. 1,000 origin crystals was truly a mere trifle for flower blossom tier warriors. 1,000 3-star origin crystals per person, Ling Han added. Pooh! Ao Feng and the others spurted out, why didn't you go rob that? 3-star origin crystals needed at least flower blossom tier warriors to refine. Normally speaking, 1 month was necessary to refine a single piece, and you actually demanded 1,000 right away? Think real carefully. Whoever rejects first, I'll make him stay. Ling Han laughed mischievously. These flower blossom tier cultivators instantly lost their temper, and felt even more in a rush to return to request help from spiritual infant tier seniors, not wanting to tangle with Ling Han. So, they threw out their spatial rings one by one. Some people didn't have 1,000 3-star origin crystals, so they used rare materials and spirit grass instead. Seeing Ling Han rake in wealth crazily, when Yi Jian couldn't help but utter, I don't get a share? Junior brother one, you come from a large sect in the East region. How could you possibly want such small things? Ling Han's hands moved non-stop, and soon over 20 spatial rings were shoved into his pocket. Damn! 3-star origin crystals. Who said he wasn't interested? However, being branded by Ling Han as such, he couldn't grab a hold of this matter anymore, and said seriously, since you also received those coordinates, we're destined to be rivals in the future. Maybe not. Maybe we can take the treasure together. Ling Han said smilingly. You think that's possible? When Yi Jian sneered. A god's treasure trove? Who didn't want it all for themselves? Why not? Seeing Ling Han full of smiles, when Yi Jian instantly felt puzzled, shaking his head as he said, you're truly a strange person. You're also very strong. Hope that you'll qualify to challenge me in the future, Ling Han said. When Yi Jian rolled his eyes again and said, I'm genuinely in the flower blossom tier, and you advanced relying on medical pills. If anyone is to propose a challenge, you're the one to challenge me. Whatever. I won't talk nonsense with you, or else it's very likely I'll die from being angered by you. He turned to leave, waving his hand as he said, next time we meet, I'll definitely kill you with all I've got. How come he reacted the same as Yao Huiyu? Junior brother one, wait, Ling Han suddenly shouted. When Yi Jian halted, then turned around with a doubtful expression. You really can't lend that conch to play with for a few days? Ling Han said smilingly. When Yi Jian almost spurted out blood, clenching his teeth as a get lost leapt out from his mouth. He immediately flew up and left in a hurry. It was unknown whether he'd return to the East region or find an uninhabited place to hide. After all, the news that he acquired Scorpio Palace's legacy would soon spread throughout the East region, and maybe his master would also be very interested in this legacy. Ling Han laughed, snapped his fingers at Lu Yutong and the others, and said, let's go too. Master Han, where to? Lu Yutong couldn't help but ask. Of course, back to Extreme Yang City. However, your acquirement of the 12 Palaces legacy will soon spread throughout the world, and by then, everyone will come find you, everyone said at once. According to the legend, after acquiring the 12 Palaces legacy, one would have the chance to cross into Shattering Void tier. This temptation alone was irresistible. Moreover, Ling Han and Wen Yijian also knew the whereabouts of the god's treasure trove, which was even more unbelievable. Even the mighty Shattering Void tier elites in the middle state would be moved. Ling Han nodded and said, it certainly is somewhat troublesome. I'm afraid that even my title of heaven-grade alchemist won't help. However, I'll still make a trip to Extreme Yang City. His mother was received there, so could he just make himself scarce like that? Lu Yutong and the others were worried, but thinking about how Ling Han had the Black Tower, self-preservation shouldn't be a problem. Only Yu Kaiyu, who was kept in the dark, became rather anxious for Ling Han. However, the mystery realm closed, and Yu had to return to the Winter Moon sect. He bid farewell with Ling Han, saying that he would do his best to persuade the elders within the sect to provide protection for Ling Han. Qi Hualan, Lin Xiangqin, Shang Zhongchan, and the others walked over one after another to say a few words with Ling Han as goodbye. The prodigy battle was already over, and the mystery realm contention come to an end. It was unknown how many years later the next time these youngsters would meet. Ling Han hastened his pace and led people out of the mountain valley as Black Tower's power boost would soon end. Coming out of the mountain valley, he stored everyone inside the Black Tower, and went inside as well. Only after applying a disguise did he come out and went to a small town, hired a carriage, and returned leisurely to Extreme Yang City. After settling in the carriage, Ling Han had the coachman not bother him, and also not call him for the 3 meals of a day, and then went into the Black Tower. During this trip, everyone profited quite a bit. Zhu Wujiu and Guang Yuan kept tempering themselves at the city gate of the first stage, pushing themselves to the limits and then taking in worldly treasures to cultivate. With the spiritual Chirich environment within the mystery realm, their improvements were like a shot. Zhu Wujiu was already at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and could charge at the spiritual pedestal tier anytime, whereas Guang Yuan was at the 6th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Such progression speed was something they would have never imagined back in Rain Country. Ken Yi and Lu Yu Tong sharpened their willpower on the floating stone stage. Although their cultivation improvement wasn't as evident as Zhu Wujiu's and Guang Yuan's, the benefits of tenacious willpower would be reflected slowly in the future, especially when charging at the threshold of the flower blossom tier. After the carriage traveled for 2 days, Lu Yutong, Zhu Wujiu, and Ken Yi announced their breakthroughs simultaneously. They crossed into the spiritual pedestal tier, and this was only 2 to 3 months after they'd broken through to the spiritual ocean tier. Reflecting back on it, even they themselves couldn't believe it. Zhu Xian'er's divine senses injury was much better. This was mainly because she personally had great martial arts talent, and in resisting the martial intent of a flower blossom tier elite, her divine sense received great tempering. After her injury healed, she would definitely welcome a stage of explosive growth, and her cultivation would skyrocket rapidly. Ling Han called her to the side and threw her a pill bottle. Master Han, Xian'er's injuries are almost all healed. I don't need to take any more medicine, this exceptional beauty said, exuding tenderness and love. Since Ling Han uncovered her veil, she no longer wore it, and her stunning appearance even entranced Lu Yutong and Li Sichan. Ling Han laughed and said, "This isn't for you to eat, but for your master." Zhu Xian'er was first startled, followed by her showing an excited expression as she said quaveringly, Could this? Hidden Tiger Heavenly Luck Pill." Ling Han nodded. "I received it passing through the 2nd stage, and thankfully you blocked a sword attack. Otherwise, if I died, I wouldn't have received this reward, so it's a gift." He hadn't finished his words, and Zhu Xian'er already leaped over, hugging him tightly. Great, was this foolish girl addicted to hugging him? However, not to mention her exceptional beauty and perfect physique. Being hugged by her, their bodies stuck to each other without reservation. A faint body fragrance spread, which made Ling Han's heart involuntarily flutter somewhat as he was lost in fanciful thoughts. Thank you, Zhu Xian'er said emotionally. Finding a spiritual medicine for her respected teacher was her greatest wish. Ling Han was awkward for a short while before patting her on the shoulder and saying, "A piece of cake. When your injuries are healed, hurry back to the Half-Moon sect." "Yes," Zhu Xian'er said softly and nodded, extremely gentle. "All right, you can let go of me now, or I can't promise what might happen next," Ling Han joked. Whatever Master Han wants to do to Xian'er would be willing. Who knew such a reply, soft like a mosquito's buzz, would sneak out from his embrace. But with Ling Han's hearing ability, how was it possible for him not to have heard clearly? Were their words more seductive than those in this world? Ling Han's blood all over his body boiled, having the urge to press down the exceptional beauty within his embrace. Who didn't like beauties, especially such a remarkable beauty? He didn't force her, and didn't lure her with promises, so he didn't need to hold back and pretend to be a gentleman since she was willing, right? However, without any reason, a silhouette suddenly flashed by Ling Han's mind, making his wonderful thoughts instantly vanish completely. It was actually Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Ling Han rejected Zhu Xian'er and said, "Your injury hasn't healed. Go back to rest first." Zhu Xian'er had just said something that made her embarrassed to the point that her entire body was burning hot and was now stupefied. If Ling Han took advantage and pushed her down, then they would experience the most intimate contact. She would then not have to be reserved in front of Ling Han, but now she couldn't even open her eyes, scramming hurriedly. Sigh. Such an exceptional beauty threw herself into my arms. I actually didn't take it. Ling Han lay on the grass, looking at the sky without stars and moon. Does my brain have a problem? To think of that savage woman at such a time. Then, Ling Han sat up abruptly, face twitching. Hiss. Could I have actually fallen for that meddling woman? Otherwise, under those circumstances, which man would reject it? I don't have a freaking wife, so it doesn't matter which woman I'm with, right? No matter whether it was Lu Yutong or Li Xichan, why was it that I've never thought of touching them? It's over. It's over. It's already been a millennium. And I suddenly realized that I fell for that savage lady. How come? Other than looking prettier than most, being stronger than most, having martial talent greater than most, and having a physique better than most, she didn't seem to have any more merits. The key is savage, subduing my 4 disciples, and coming to my place to sweep out the medicinal pills from time to time. She never treated herself as an outsider. I've truly never seen such a rogue woman. What? Ling Han's expression was strange. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden behaved like she was the mistress. Could it be? Could it be? I'm such an idiot! He yelled out towards the sky. Small Tower appeared and said to him indifferently, "You certainly are an idiot. I only spoke thoughtlessly. Someone incomparably smart like me is million miles away from stupid." Ling Han immediately returned to his carefree attitude, as he didn't want others to know what weighed on his mind. You can't hide from me. In the past millennium, I preserved your soul, and your memories in those years were all clearly seen by me. Small Tower still insipid. Hey, is it really good for you to spy on people's privacy? Ling Han wanted to punch someone. You think I wanted to look? Small Tower said coldly, paused, then went on. It's clear, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was interested in you. But you bonehead didn't realize it all. Since Small Tower knew, Ling Han pretended no longer, sighing and said, "That savage woman was so domineering. If she liked me, just say so. Not gentle at all." However, he immediately shook his head. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, one of the 7 heaven-tier elites in his previous life, the beautiful battle goddess who was second to Sword Emperor, the super genius, how could she possibly effectively ingratiate herself with a man like a normal woman would? If it truly were like that, then would that still be Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden? Your gentleness? I really don't understand. Ling Han muttered. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden ran over to his place from time to time and grabbed things left and right, not acting like an outsider at all. This was actually an obvious hint. Unfortunately, he was too proud back then, and all he wanted to do was cross into the shattering void tier to suppress that savage woman. If he took a step back, maybe Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden would also relinquish her haughty airs, and the two would already have been together. Now, they were separated by a millennium. Even Jiang Yufeng, that attention-seeker, became a god. With Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's talents, she definitely also broke the void and became a god. And once one's a god, while perhaps one's lifespan wouldn't be infinite, living for several tens of thousands of years shouldn't be a problem. Ling Han immediately clenched his fist. Wait till I break the void and become a god. I'll definitely come find you. You savage woman, if you dare marry another man, then I'll really be done with you. The carriage rocked, and spent 7 days to return to extreme Yang City. Ling Han immediately had Li Xichan, Lu Yutong, and the others leave for Not Forget and Alchemist King Pavilion to take back the origin crystals earned in these few days. This was the truly useful thing. Silver didn't matter. He personally went to the North Pill Pavilion to find Gongyang Tai Sun. he had to pick up his mother and return to Rain Country to reunite with his father. Alchemists devoted heart and soul to refining pills, even giving up the quotas for 12 Heaven Mystery Realm. Although part of the reason was because they were no match for martial artists, this group was certainly indifferent to martial arts, so there were also few elites among them. For example, amongst the alchemists of North Pill Pavilion, only one reached the spiritual infant tier, and it was precisely Gongyan Tai-sun. Ling Han believed that Gongyang Tai-sun would definitely revere his title of Heaven-grade alchemist, and not want to obtain the 12 Palaces legacy from him. Of course, he didn't completely trust someone he didn't know quite well. Anyway, with the Black Tower, he could escape safely under the worst circumstances. After arriving at the North Pill Pavilion, he showed everyone his original looks. Respects for Master Ling. On his path, all alchemists paid their respects. Ling Han slightly nodded in response, and soon came to Gongyang Tai-sun's private house. And when the Gongyang Tai-sun received news, he also came greeting immediately. Master Han. This old one is useless, and couldn't settle the matter. Gongyang Tai-sun told Ling Han who was to blame. An ominous feeling surged within Ling Han as he said with a frown, "What happened? The Winter Moon sect won't let her go." Gongyang Tai-sun said furiously. With a heaven-grade alchemist's order on paper and in addition to him, a medium-level earth-grade alchemist making a trip, he actually couldn't get anyone, even he was extremely annoyed. Ling Han stroked his chin. Could Winter Moon sect think of threatening him with his mother? It was impossible for the Winter Moon sect to know Ling Han's relationship with Yu Hongchang. But anyone would find it strange a heaven-grade alchemist demanded a sinner of Winter Moon sect. More importantly, North region wasn't the middle state. Here, a heaven-grade alchemist was actually no different from a medium-level earth-grade alchemist. If spiritual infant-tier warriors truly didn't give face, what could you do? Summon a deity transformation tier to suppress them? Just like in the middle state, Yao Huiyu and the disciples of such supersects actually didn't respect alchemists a single bit. I know. Ling Han nodded. Apparently, he'd have to personally go over to the Winter Moon sect. Master Han, this old one will accompany on your trip, Gongyang Tai-sun said worriedly. Obviously, he'd already heard that Ling Han acquired the 12 Palaces legacy, and feared that the Winter Moon sect might resort to violence. No need. I have my own strategy, Ling Han said smilingly. He left the North Pill Pavilion and returned to his dwellings. Lu Yutong and the others returned one after another, bringing bad news. Both places had been destroyed. No one knew who'd done it, but after the shop closed at night, once the door opened the second day, there would be corpses inside. With the stench of corpses filling the air, who would still want to eat or buy medicine? The Thousand Corpse Sect. A dignified large sect actually used such lowly tactics, truly lacking in class. Is this trying to make me uncomfortable? Ling Han muttered. Fortunately, these two properties only brought in a stable income for Ling Han. What truly allowed him to get rich quick was auctioning medicinal pills, so this couldn't harm him seriously. Forget about this. I've now acquired the 12 Palaces legacy, and my background will soon be dug out bit by bit, so I must save Mother as soon as possible and then bring Father out of Rain Country. Can't let others have a hold on me. To the Winter Moon sect. Ling Han simply closed Forget-Not and Alchemist King Pavilion. During this time, Yin Hong came over once, and Ling Han promised to come over at the year's end to fulfill his previous promise, representing North Region's Spirit Treasure Pavilion to attend that contest. Afterwards, he departed and headed for the Winter Moon sect. Zhu Xian'er didn't return to the Half Moon sect. Her injuries weren't healed, and with her fame of an exceptional beauty, if someone knew she was still injured, it was hard to guarantee that someone wouldn't take advantage of it and snatch her to keep her locked as a mistress. Consequently, she recuperated inside the Black Tower and followed Ling Han to the Winter Moon sect. Ling Han still hired a carriage while he cultivated diligently every day. This trip to the Winter Moon sect took a month. When he arrived, he also reached the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Inside the Black Tower, everyone cultivated diligently, especially Hunyo, who began cultivating for the first time, making Ling Han cry out like he'd seen a ghost. After 1 month, the carriage finally rocked its way to the Winter Moon sect. Ling Han advanced to the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier as a matter of course, and he also advanced into the level of the spiritual ocean tier in cultivating the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art. However, the increase of brute force was consistent and unlike origin power, whose power would increase explosively upon a breakthrough to the next layer. Brute force had no hurdles. It was simply the accumulation of diligent cultivation, and most importantly, one's nutrition had to keep up. Only when becoming God in flesh would barriers emerge. Ling Han examined it shortly. The 9 Dragons Tyrant body art was to open the 9 godly barriers inside the body, and with each barrier unlocked, one would possess the power of a true dragon. When all 9 barriers opened, one could become a god in flesh. Otherwise, even if one had the power of several true dragons, one would still be confined to the realm of mortals. At best, one would just be an extremely strong mortal. Like spiritual pedestal tier warriors. No matter how powerful you were, that wasn't the flower blossom tier. Unfortunately, Ling Han reached a bottleneck in studying the 2 bone patterns, unable to comprehend it all along. Probably, his tier wasn't enough and he had to cross into the flower blossom tier to comprehend it. Instead, he made remarkable progress in the way of the sword because the bottleneck of the 10th flash of sword chi opened. It was as if he returned to when he only had 1 flash of sword chi. In the short time of a month, he cultivated another 3 flashes of sword chi. 13 flashes of sword chi. This already surpassed Yao Huiyu. However, Yao Huiyu had probably just broken through to the 10th flash of sword chi at the time, and very soon grasped the 11th flash of sword chi. He now was probably no lower than 13 flashes of sword chi. Ling Han believed in the Yao Huiyu's strength. Besides, when Yi Jian never attacked with full strength all along, and that guy's limit probably also surpassed the limit of 10 flashes. He waved his hand, signaling the carriage to retreat as he walked alone towards Winter Moon Sect's main gate. This familiar gate and path, he just arrived at the place, but was already obstructed. A large sect naturally wouldn't let people go in as they pleased. Ling Han actually had Han Lin's identity token, but he didn't take it out. He originally thought to use this identity to secretly investigate the whereabouts of his mother, but since he already returned to the identity of a heaven-grade alchemist, he didn't have go through such trouble, directly demanding for his mother. "I am Ling Han. Let your sect master get the hell out to see me," Ling Han said indifferently. "Sect master? Get the hell out to see me?" This put together instantly stupefied the few disciples near the main gate. Was this youngster an idiot to run to the Winter Moon sect to say such a thing? Was he tired of living? Ling Han had no intention of tangling here and directly unleashed the presence of the spiritual pedestal tier, instantly suppressing these few people, making them dreadfully pale. They hurriedly ran staggeringly, hurriedly requesting experts to come out. Someone was here to break through the main gate. Soon some experts appeared. There were spiritual ocean tier warriors, spiritual pedestal tier ones, and of course more were normal disciples at the gushing spring tier. Everyone was very curious because the Winter Moon sect was one of 4 strongest forces in the North region. Someone actually dared to come look for trouble? What, Ling Han? Someone recognized him, a friend from the 9 nations of the desolate North. Bai Yuquan, Zhong Higuang, Chu Shuiyun, and the others were all geniuses of the 9 nations of the desolate North. Their improvements were evident, all crossing into the spiritual ocean tier. Back at the desolate North, they would be the mainstays of large families. They were even more surprised as they heard Ling Han had become a heaven-grade alchemist. This was like dream to them, unimaginable. It was definitely just 2 people with the same first and last name. Now, this legendary figure of the desolate North appeared before them, an 18-year-old youngster who was still somewhat immature. "So it's Master Ling." A spiritual pedestal tier officer walked out, cupped his hand in obeisance towards Ling Han, and said, "We're honored to have you here. Might I ask what business you have?" Ling Han glanced at him and said coldly, "Who the hell are you to have the right to speak to me? A small figure should stand by the side and let the grown-ups come." That spiritual pedestal tier warrior couldn't help but choke, revealing an annoyed look. A mere 18-year-old youngster. He only said those courteous words out of respect for him being a heaven-grade alchemist, but he never would have thought he'd be answered with such cold words. As he saw it, the Winter Moon sect was one of North region's strongest sects, and though alchemists were beyond the public, now that he ran roughshod over the sect before its gate, who needed to be courteous with him. Status beyond the public's was because the position he took was also beyond the public, but if he participated in the disputes of ordinary affairs, then how would he be beyond the public? The Winter Moon sect doesn't welcome you. Please leave, that spiritual pedestal tier guy said, displeased. Already said that you have no right, so why do you like to babble? Ling Han said with displeasure as well. Outrageous. That spiritual pedestal tier cultivator was furious, launching an attack towards Ling Han. He planned to teach this youngster a lesson and let him know that this was Winter Moon sect and not the Alchemist Society. A mere spiritual pedestal tier warrior dares to attack a heaven-grade alchemist? Ling Han said coldly as his figure already flashed before that spiritual pedestal tier elite. How could he be so quick? The other party was stunned, but before being able to react in time, Ling Han's hand already waved past his face, and then he knew nothing. Death. Hiss. Gasps of astonishment sounded in the surrounding. That was a spiritual pedestal tier officer, but he was killed with a single strike. Too inconceivable. Could it be that Ling Han was at the flower blossom tier? The people from the desolate north were even more surprised. How could Ling Han be so strong? Everyone walked out from the desolate north, but without seeing each other for a year, the gap between them was like heaven and earth. That spiritual pedestal tier's corpse fell to the ground and slightly kicked up the dust, appearing so inconspicuous. Ling Han retracted his fist and said indifferently, Ones who can speak and decide still won't come out? Master Ling, coming to Winter Moon sect to kill, that's not so wise, is it? With a sneer, several people flew out from the mountains, standing loftily in the air. I only have one thing to say, hand over Yu Hongchong, Ling Han said balefully. Ha! Killing one of Winter Moon sect's disciples and still wanting to seize someone? Ao Feng also showed up. Hand over the 12 Palaces legacy as compensation. You truly know how to tell jokes. Ling Han waved his right hand and summoned the rock spirit. Eat this entire mountain up. The rock spirit wiped off cold sweat. It liked to eat rocks, but those were unusual rocks that possessed super energy that could increase its strength. It couldn't swallow just any type of rock. But Master spoke up, so how could it not obey? The large fellow immediately dug in. The first to suffer was the main gate. It was mashed with a palm, and then the shattered pillars were picked up and gnawed on. Everyone was shocked and angered. The main gate represented a sect's face. Ling Han. Many flower blossom tier warriors roared angrily. This youngster was too young, making it hard for them to have the respect for him as a heaven-grade alchemist. Ling Han cracked a smile, and simply pretended not to have heard them. The golem was extremely gloomy. The rock pillars were truly unpalatable. It turned its head frequently towards Ling Han, hoping to receive Master's kind permission to no longer munch on these rocks. All right, you want to see Yu Hongchong? Then I'll let you see her. Ao Feng spoke up. He was a spiritual infant tier warrior's descendant, so his words were naturally more effective than normal flower blossom tier cultivators. Waving his hand, someone immediately left. Ling Han frowned. Ao Feng's anger wasn't that intense, and even had the trace of a lofty smirk deep within his eyes. Could it be that he'd already guessed his relationship with Yu Hongchong? This wasn't impossible. After all, a heaven-grade alchemist demanded a person that they'd never seen without any reason. Was this not worthy to think about deeply? Thinking about the two people's ages and how Winter Moon sect Jut recruited a new bunch of disciples from Rain Country. Could he not have scouted out some information on Ling Han? Now he pretended to be affected just to probe him? Ling Han sneered. He ran over naturally not due to a temporary impulse. He also had a trump card. Shortly, two spiritual pedestal tier cultivators walked over with a woman in detention. That woman was only 40 years old, with a dejected look on her face. Yet it didn't hide her beauty. Examining closely, she looked somewhat similar to Ling Han. This was definitely Yu Hongchong. Ling Han didn't even need to ask, feeling a connection in bloodline, which made him certain that this was his birth mother. Master Ling, now that the person's been brought here, what do you have to say? Ao Feng said indifferently. seeming to have everything in his grasp. Ling Han stood with his hands behind his back and said, "Let her go!" Junior sister Hong Yu Chong. "Doesn't this youngster look familiar?" Ao Feng spoke instead to Yu Hong Chong. Ever since Yu Hong Chong saw Ling Han, her gaze was fixed on him, with disbelief and agitation between her expressions. Her body even began to tremble. She didn't pay attention to Ao Feng, simply looking at Ling Han absorbedly, as if she'd never see enough. "Master Ling, it's said that you come from Rain Country in the 9 nations of the desolate north, in a small town ruled by large origin city. Your father's name is Ling what again?" Ao Feng got the cold shoulder, but didn't seem to mind, asking Ling Han again. Hearing this, Yu Hong Chang's expression was even more emotional, but she immediately returned to being indifferent and said, "I don't recognize this youngster. Bring me back." Junior sister Hong Chong. "So cold after seeing your son separated for 18 years. Ao Feng smiled grimly as he finally threw out the heavy bomb. Hong, hearing those words, the people of the Winter Moon sect were stirred up. So it turned out that Ling Han's mother was actually a disciple of the Winter Moon sect. Moreover, her identity was not simple. No wonder Ling Han would demand someone for no reason. There was a reason to after all. "I don't know what nonsense you're talking about." Yu Hong Chong looked calm and collected. Ling Han, however, revealed a smile and said, "Mother, no need to hide. Today I'm here to bring you back to reunite with father." Instantly, the entire mountain was in an uproar. Guessing was one thing but confirming was another. A dignified heaven-grade alchemist actually had such a deep relationship with the Winter Moon sect. However, the relationship between the two parties didn't look peaceful in any way. As Ling Han called his mother, Yu Hong Chong instantly burst into tears. She resisted acknowledging her son. Wasn't it because she didn't want to let the Winter Moon sect use her to coerce her son by holding her hostage? However, she never would have thought that her son would acknowledge her in public. Without seeing her son for 18 years, her emotions completely lost control once she heard Ling Han call her mother. She cried bitterly, and if she weren't restrained, she truly wanted to take Ling Han into her embrace and look at him as much as she wanted. 18 years. An entire 18 years. Ha 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 ha. Ao Feng laughed loudly yet extremely balefully. He never would have thought that the little pest he'd spared out of sudden soft-heartedness back then actually became a heaven-grade alchemist, a figure that was on par with sect masters. Now, it was very difficult to kill Ling Han, especially with Ling Han having the 12 Palaces legacy, which was even related to a god's treasure trove. If the Winter Moon sect directly killed him and snatched the treasure, the entire North region's forces would attack the Winter Moon sect together in the name of taking revenge for a heaven-grade alchemist. However, there wouldn't be a problem if Ling Han stayed at the Winter Moon sect. As long as Ling Han admitted that he was willing to stay here, who could meddle in their business? To make Ling Han stay willingly was easy, as long as there was Yu Hong Chong. Coerce him with Yu Hong Chang's life, and he wouldn't be afraid that Ling Han would be disobedient. However, no matter what, Ao Feng couldn't seem to be happy. This little pest was a stain in his life. The woman who was supposed to be his wife gave birth to another man's son, and seeing Ling Han made him feel like he'd been cheated on. Unfortunately, killing Ling Han or not wasn't something he could decide. This was a decision of Winter Moon sect's higher-ups, reflecting the will of the 9 old monsters at the spiritual infant tier. "Master Ling, since you've acknowledged your blood, stay in the sect in the future. Moreover, I'll invite your father over and let your family reunite," Ao Feng said balefully. Would he really be so kind to let the son of a personal enemy stand there and bring over the man who made him a cuckold to wander before his eyes all day? One was enough as a hostage, and the other would be killed. Poor encourager less Otra's one. "Master Ling, since we're so sincere, shouldn't you also show sincerity to some extent?" Ao Feng said smilingly. "It's said that you obtained many treasures inside the 12 Heaven Mystery Realm. Take it all out and let us see." Ling Han also smiled, but was also very cold. "Do your ears have problems?" I said, "Today I'm here to take someone away. If Master Ling wants to leave, then please." Another flower blossom tier elite said. He was called Li Pei Yuan. and the Li family also had a mighty spiritual infant tier. However, junior sister Hongchong is a person of the Winter Moon sect, so she'll naturally stay in the sect. Ling Han looked at the dozen flower blossom tier elites before him and said, "What if I forcibly take someone away?" Ha 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 ha. Everyone laughed loudly. Ao Feng went on, "Master Ling, your accomplishments in alchemy are certainly unmatched, but you're still just a spiritual pedestal tier warrior. Moreover, though you have medicinal pills to get stronger by one large tier, this sect has not just flower blossom tier elites." In reality, Ling Han had already used the Black Tower's power boost at the spiritual pedestal tier, and now couldn't possibly possess battle prowess of the flower blossom tier. But of course, he wouldn't say so. "Killing's what uncivilized men do," Ling Han said disdainfully, and then waved his right hand as a corpse instantly appeared at the main gate. Hong! A terrifying presence swept everyone dropped weakly onto the ground. The coercive power of the god's remains was too strong, and furthermore, this wasn't the divine temple which could suppress godly presence. It instantly swept towards the mountaintop and frightened the spiritual infant tier elites as they shot up into the sky one after another, not daring to get close. Whoever went up would be out of luck. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "See? Like I said, I don't like to kill, that's the most inferior way of doing things." If Lu Yutong heard those words, she would definitely snicker because Ling Han very often liked to kill. Even though he could clearly use his title to resolve things, he had to use his fists. Now, no one could retort. Under the god's coercive might, no one could open their mouths. Ling Han walked to Yu Hongchang's side, helped her up and said, "Mother, you've suffered a lot these years." Yu Hongchang couldn't speak, simply blinking her eyes as tears fell down. Ling Han helped her mother to the side to sit down, and spoke of a few things about his father, looking like he was going to engage in small talk here. This made the people of the Winter Moon sect speechless. They were still lying on all fours. However, other than sweating cold sweat, they couldn't do anything else. "Mother, I'll first send you away." Ling Han walked Yu Hongchang to the back of a large rock and made Yu Hongchang not resist his consciousness, storing her into the Black Tower. The Winter Moon sect would definitely not let the matter drop like this. There were still 9 spiritual infant tier elites, and though they didn't dare to approach now, once Ling Han put away the god's remains, they would definitely attack immediately. Ling Han could hide into the Black Tower at any time, but with one more person, accidents would inevitably occur, and Yu Hongchang definitely couldn't get into an accident. He walked back, arriving before Ao Feng. Ao Feng could only look up at the son of his enemy, and the psychological damage inside his heart was probably astonishingly large. There were definitely 10,000 grass mud horses galloping by. Pa! Ling Han stepped on his face and crushed it forcefully, making Ao Feng groan in pain. He had no rock cliff body, nor iron sheet body, and without a origin power barrier, his body's defense was only slightly stronger than a normal person's. "I should take your life, but as a son, I shouldn't deprive my father of his job. So, your life will be left for my father to personally take." Ling Han kicked Ao Feng ferociously, crippling Ao Feng's spirit base. That was how Ao Feng treated his father back then, and now Ling Han paid it back in full. From now on, Ao Feng's cultivation would stagnate at the 3rd layer of the flower blossom tier, while Ling Dongxing's tier would soon catch up. To repair a spirit base? No way. What grade of spirit pill was required to restore a spirit base crippled by Ling Han? At least heaven grade. Where would Ao family find that? He should just quietly wait for death. Ao Feng couldn't even yell out, simply groaning in pain. He was the genius of the Winter Moon sect, breaking through to the flower blossom tier before being 50 years in age, with a chance to cross into the spiritual infant tier in the future. But now, his spirit base was destroyed, breaking off his path of advancement. He was shocked, angered, and frightened, instantly fainting. Scaring a flower blossom tier warrior till they fainted, Ling Han probably created a first in history. Ling Han smiled slightly, swept his gaze past Feng Yan, and walked over in large strides. "Although I've never cared about you since I've come, I might as well take care of you." Seeing Feng Yan's lips tremble, trying hard to speak, Ling Han simply picked up Feng Yan and walked far from the god's skeletal remains. Ling Han, you bully others by taking advantage of your connections. What hero you are! Feng Yan scolded. Ling Han was astonished and said, "Do my ears have a problem? You'd actually say something so substandard? When you were in Rain Country, didn't you take advantage of having a spiritual infant tier master to try to kill me in public? Taking a spiritual infant tier law decree to assume unwarranted authority and acting extremely unbridled. It's all based on my own strength anyhow. How is this taking advantage of connections? Feng Yan, you're truly fallen low." Those words made Feng Yan's face red all over. At that time, he certainly had been self-satisfied, not even caring about Rain Emperor. In the end, it was Rain Emperor, whom he ignored, that unleashed surprising strength that repelled the expert sent from the Winter Moon sect. If he'd straightened his attitude at the time, perhaps Rain Emperor wouldn't have intervened. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in all things. Ling Han, you have the guts to give me 3 years' time? Wait till I advance into Flower Blossom tier to battle again. Feng Yan said so upright and unafraid. He possessed an ancient divine beast's bloodline and his cultivation progression speed was shockingly fast. Retard. Ling Han shook his head. Won't be long before your brother goes to middle state to play. Why wait 3 years for you? By that time, the grass on your burial mound would have grown tall. You actually want to kill me? This is the Winter Moon sect. Feng Yan yelled furiously. You overestimate yourself. So what if I killed you? I promise nothing happens to me. Ling Han pat Ling Han's face and said, You have any last words? Seeing that we're both Rain Country's people, I'll do my best to complete it for you. You can't kill me. I'm the disciple of a spiritual infant tier elite. Feng Yan suddenly screamed at the top his lungs. Master, save me. Save me. Scream. Yell till your throat breaks. No one will come save you. Ling Han said smilingly. Master Ling, would you give me some face and let this small disciple go? At this time, a voice sounded from afar. An indistinct white-browed old man could be seen standing in the air. He had a large stature and wore a white cotton clothing, very much like a celestial. Winter Moon sect's spiritual infant tier elite, Shi He Shun, who was also Feng Yan's master. Ling Han said indifferently, Why should I give you face? Who the hell are you? Hiss, how could he dare to speak to a spiritual infant tier elite like that? Everyone was first startled, but thinking carefully, Ling Han truly had such right. If it weren't the North region with different martial arts levels, in the middle state, a spiritual infant tier could only be servile to heaven-grade alchemists. So how could a spiritual infant tier even have any face? However, this was North region after all, and spiritual infant tier elites were above all else invincible. Was it truly wise to rebut a mighty spiritual infant tier like that? Shi He Shun's face immediately twitched, and his sage-like presence immediately dispersed. He pointed threateningly at Ling Han and said, Junior, you dare touch a single hair on this old man's disciple, and this old man will skin you alive. Should I pretend to be scared to cooperate with you? Ling Han sneered. Sadly, though you lived quite long, you're not deserving of my respect, so take a hike. If you want to save him, come. I'll kill you too, old dog. Shi He Shun roared furiously at the sky, but with the god's skeletal remains suppression, he didn't dare to approach at all. Otherwise, he would definitely be like the other people, suppressed by that supreme presence and unable to move. Ling Han smiled at Feng Yan and said, Look, even your master has no way. You'd better just accept your fate. No, no, Feng Yan yelled. He didn't want to die, he couldn't die now. He possessed a divine beast's bloodline and had a chance to become a shattering void tier elite in the future. Moreover, he hadn't taken revenge for his brother's death and the hatred of losing his leg. Yet he was actually going to die in the hands of his enemy? Not resigned, he was not resigned. That's right, just this resentfulness. Ling Han said, When you killed and hurt people brazenly, did you ever think of how the people you bullied felt? So do as you would be done by. There will always be someone who can punish you. And you're very unfortunate to have met me. Be a good man in the next life, whatever, just by your actions in this life you still want to be a man? Better off as a pig and eaten to pay for your sins. One Ling Han stomped hard and Feng Yan's entire head instantly sunk into the mud. His limbs twitched for a while and soon drooped down. He was obviously thoroughly dead. Ling Han! Ling Han! Ling Han! Sure, He Shun roared angrily at the sky, bristling with anger. He was truly furious to the extreme. Bring it on if you have the guts. This lord will battle 300 rounds with you, Ling Han challenged. Sure, He Shun couldn't possibly dare to accept the challenge. Running over, he would only be suppressed by the god's skeletal remains. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "If you guys don't come here, this lord will leave. Besides, you guys better think it through. If you want to chase after this lord, maybe you'll give away your life." He walked over and waved his hand, storing the god's skeletal remains in the Black Tower. But a ruthless mental shock immediately charged right at his consciousness, almost making him hack out blood. He could move freely under the godly presence, but touching the god's skeletal remains was another matter. Ling Han resisted with great difficulty, not letting anyone see an inkling of it. If you want to chase this lord, bring it on. He looked again at Ao Feng, who had woken up. Don't you die, your life will be left for my father to reap. Or else, my father will be left with regret. Ao Feng simply wanted to raise his middle finger at Ling Han, but cold sweat was all over his body. He was completely out of strength, so he couldn't possibly raise his hand. Ling Han descended the mountain in large strides. In the sky, 9 divine senses constantly locked onto him. 8 were filled with killing intent, while 1 had a hint of friendliness. That was definitely Yu family's elder. In fact, the more valiant he was, the happier Yu family's elder would be. He was the descendant of the family, although not surnamed Yu. However, the other 8 spiritual infanteers never attacked, probably having qualms about the god's skeletal remains. Perhaps they were waiting for Ling Han to be inattentive and careless to launch a sudden surprise attack, killing him. Besides, it would be an extremely problematic matter if a heaven-grade alchemist died at the Winter Moon sect, so they obviously wanted to wait for him to be slightly further to attack. Ling Han! Ling Han! Yu quickly rushed over. After leaving the Mystery Realm, he went straight back to the Winter Moon sect, so he obviously arrived several days earlier than Ling Han. Brother Yu! Ling Han laughed. Master Han Pa! Yu rushed over and snatched Ling Han by the chest, picking him up. You bastard, you obviously knew I'm your older cousin. Yet you still made me call you Master Han. Master Han! Let my aunt out to judge what's right and wrong. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Say, cousin, do you still remember that we made a bet and you still owe me something? When did we make such a bet? Yu was at a loss. Ling Han casually tossed an identity token at Yu. Han Lin. Yu received the identity token and finally realized that Han Lin was precisely Ling Han. When they entered Duan Zhengji's old hideout, Ling Han once made a bet with him whether Ling Han could extinguish that many corpse soldiers in a limited time, and obviously he lost. So, this guy had already anticipated it. You're too crafty, Yu criticized. He finally understood why Han Lin would gift him Restore Spirit pills so generously, almost like a dolt. After all the answers were revealed, he was too embarrassed to criticize Ling Han. Couldn't be helped that he'd accepted those gifts and was now partial, no? Ling Han laughed loudly and said, I'll come see you in the future. As for now, you head back first. I'm afraid the old bastards will suddenly attack and drag you in. Can you block it? Yu said seriously. No problem, Ling Han said full of confidence. Yu nodded. He fought alongside Ling Han in the 12 Heaven Mystery Realm and was very confident in Ling Han. Since Ling Han said it was no problem, then there definitely wouldn't be a problem. All right, remember to come visit me with my aunt and uncle, he reminded again. Got it? Got it, why re you so much like an old woman? Ling Han waved his hand to dismiss him. You're the old woman, Yu retorted, turning to leave as he kept waving at Ling Han. Ling Han also waved his hand, and then turned to leave, advancing in large strides. His mental spirit was raised to the limit, and once he felt the slightest rustle of leaves, he would immediately enter the Black Tower. He wasn't afraid of what anyone thought now, since the news of the god's treasure trove got out anyway. Even shattering void-tier elites could possibly attack him. There truly wasn't anything to be afraid of. Considering, wasn't there someone who opened the Sagittarius Palace previously? Why did the key circulate into the Jiang family's hands? Obviously, that person was slaughtered. After half a day, he was far from the Winter Moon sect. Presumably, the 8 people who followed behind should attack soon. Ling Han smiled and jumped up abruptly into a large surging river. Putong water splashed everywhere, but he didn't float up, entering directly into the Black Tower. Shoo, 9 figures descended from the sky. Each person revealed an astounded look because they no longer felt Ling Han's presence. However, an old man revealed a hint of a joyful smile in his astonishment. That was obviously Yu family's elder. How could he possibly disappear? Sure, he yelled furiously. This boy must have some special method that can shield his presence and tracks. Ao family's elder conjectured, his gaze extremely baleful. His descendant, Aofeng, who was most likely to advance into spiritual infant tier, had his spirit base crippled. Chase separately. The 9 people immediately moved separately. Yu family's elder obviously had other plans. If he encountered Ling Han, not only would he not seize Ling Han, but also think of a way to bring him away. However, they didn't know that the Black Tower turned into a speck that flowed with the surging stream and was rapidly rushing into the distance. This river would finally return to the sea, the exit of the desolate north. Ling Han didn't care so much. He entered the Black Tower and reunited with his mother. Son. After seeing Ling Han, Yu Hongchang, who'd stopped her tears, instantly cried in streams again, hugging Ling Han, unwilling to let go. She'd already waited 18 years by now and had assumed there would be no chance in this life for a reunion. But heaven was not cold to her, and finally, she saw her son again. Ling Han was also stirred up with emotion. He finally had a father and mother in this life. The mother and son spoke for a long time. It was basically Yu Hongchang asking how he spent the many years. Ling Han naturally reported the good and not the bad. And when she found out that her son had become a heaven-grade alchemist, Yu Hongchang was shocked speechless. No wonder Aofeng and the others called Ling Han Master Ling. Turns out her so was quite accomplished. After chatting for half a day, Ling Han said, "Mother, let me introduce you to some people." He brought Yu Hongchang over to see Lu Yutong and the others. "It's our honor to see Mistress." Can Yi, Zhu Wujiu, and Guang Yuan paid respects kneeling on one knee, while the 3 girls sweetly called her auntie. Hunyo was somewhat muddled, biting on a finger. Yu Hongchang was instantly unable to conceal her happiness. These 3 girls were all so charming, especially Zhu Xian'er, who was so beautiful that even she would be touched. Her son was truly fortunate to find such beautiful wives. The 3 girls obviously ingratiated themselves intentionally. This was their future mother-in-law. Even if Ling Han wasn't interested in them, as long as they captured the heart of the mother-in-law, would they still fear not being able to become Ling Han's wife? "Son, is this your daughter?" Seeing Hunyo, Yu Hongchan was involuntarily somewhat dumbfounded. Her son was only so mature, and he already has such a large daughter? Hunyo stuck her hands on her hips and said in all seriousness, "Definitely not. Nyo is Ling Han's wife." Yu Hongchan was speechless. This girl was only so old, and she said she wanted to be her son's wife. How long would her son have to wait? How long would she also have to wait before holding a grandson in her arms? However, this little girl was also really charming, delicate, and beautiful, and after she grew up, her looks probably wouldn't be inferior to Zhu Xian'er's. Take the adults and keep the small one, all would be Ling family's people in the future. If Ling Dongxing dared to be so fickle, Yu Hongchang would definitely turn into a lioness, but it would be different for her son. The more wives the better, and best that all of them had big butts and could give birth to more grandsons and granddaughters for her. At this time, Ling Han had no room to interrupt. Yu Hongchan took the absolute initiative as she pulled on the Lu Yutong and the other 2 girls, chattering away like they were already a family. Hunyo was unadapted to such an atmosphere and began to eat again, not fearing that being able to eat so much would scare the future mother-in-law. Kenyi, your path of martial arts is not by my side. Ling Han called Kenyi over. Following me, you can only become an expert in the future, but not a master of a generation. He paused shortly, then went on. I hope you can become a great master in the way of the saber, the emperor of sabers. Kenye's breathing instantly sped up. He'd never thought Ling Han had such high expectations for him. He put up no pretenses, half kneeling as he said, Master Han, I definitely won't disappoint your expectations. Ling Han nodded and said, I'll give you enough resources, but at most to send you to the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. The following road you'll have to walk on your own. However, the path you take on your own is the true martial arts that belongs to you. I understand. Kenyi nodded. Ling Han pondered and said, You can first go to middle state. I'll be going there next, but not under the identity of Ling Han. Kenyi understood. Everyone knew that Ling Han acquired the 12 Palaces legacy, and even knew the location of a god's treasure trove. If Ling Han still casually ran to the middle state, he'd be broken into pieces by shattering void tier elites immediately. I'll still be called Han Lin. You can take note, but don't inquire intentionally. Ling Han followed. Yes. Kenyi nodded repeatedly. Ling Han threw Kenyi several spatial rings filled with all sorts of medicinal ingredients and other ingredients from within the Black Tower. This needed several spatial rings to pack, so it could be imagined how many things were inside. Kenyi was not at all reserved. He kept his appreciation in his heart. If Ling Han needed anything in the future, he would be Ling Han's saber, slashing towards any enemy. Go! Ling Han let Kenyi out of the Black Tower. The surging river water naturally couldn't do anything to a spiritual pedestal tier warrior. The Black Tower drifted with the waves, and after 10 days, Ling Han finally came out of the Black Tower. At this moment, he was already far from the Winter Moon Sect's territory. Having not found Ling Han in those many days, those spiritual infant tier cultivators completely lost track of him. However, these people were very likely to ambush him at the Fallen Moon Gorge, the land that had to be passed to enter the desolate north. Spiritual infant tier experts ambushing a spiritual pedestal tier 1. Saying this was extremely laughable, but Ling Han had a god's skeletal remains that even spiritual infant tiers dared not approach. So, obviously, they could only ambush him, not daring to let Ling Han summon the god's corpse. Ling Han shook his head inwardly. The 2 god corpses weren't preserved properly and were sucked of their godly essence. So the god tier's oppressive might was actually continuously fading. It was probably not long before they completely turned to normal bones. However, he didn't care. Suppressing others with God's bones was no help at all to his path of martial arts. And if it hadn't been for saving his mother this time, he actually wouldn't have wanted to use it. There were too many resources in the Black Tower, such as king-tier beast's meat, high-tier origin crystals, various medicinal ingredients, and spiritual liquid. With these things added together, Ling Han's cultivation advanced to late stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier in a dozen days, arriving not far from the flower blossom tier. His brute force finally advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier as well, but the improvement rate began to slow down. After all, it caught up to Ling Han's tier, unlike before where it improved at an explosive speed. Everyone's improvements were evident. Yu Hongchang, who was originally at the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier, improved to the 4th layer in roughly half a month's time. It was clear how much benefit she received from the Black Tower. In half a month, I can charge at the flower blossom tier, Ling Han muttered. If those old bastards still dare to bully me, I'll use Black Tower's power boost again to crush and kill each and every one of them, making them drop the idea forever. Advancing into the flower blossom tier meant that he would finally take a true step in martial arts and break away from the identity of Immortal, possessing 200 years more lifespan and being able to fly in flesh. After another day, the majestic Fallen Moon Gorge appeared before him. It was as if a mark cut by a divine saber and could almost be claimed a wonder. He walked over in large strides. He had to go to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall because he'd once promised to let Long Yongchong and the others observe him refining Restore Spirit Pill. In the end, He had Lu Jitong directly send the medicinal pill to Rain Country. However, there were many medium-level Earth-grade medicinal pills he could refine, so he'd just change one to refine. Xiao. An attack stormed over, as fast as lightning. Ling Han's instincts were faster than his consciousness, entering right into the Black Tower. This attack was too terrifying, reaching the level of the spiritual infant tier. Not to mention that he didn't even have the time to activate the Thunder Battle armor. Even if could, it wouldn't be able to block a spiritual infant tier's heavy attack. The gap was truly too great. Hong, the place he was originally at, instantly became a deep pit as a giant mushroom cloud soared into the sky. The destructive power of the spiritual infant tier was too terrifying. This was aiming for his life. Through the Black Tower, Ling Han observed and saw a skinny dark old man appear. He looked ordinary but emitted a baleful presence, frightening people out of their wits. This was of course a spiritual infant tier being, but what surprised Ling Han even more was that the old man had the presence of the dead. Corpse Chi. This old man was from the Thousand Corpse sect. After staying silent for so long, the Thousand Corpse sect finally moved. There wasn't just one, as another short and fat old man appeared, looking like a merchant. His eyes were squinted, but as his eyes opened and closed, a shocking, ruthless spirit was emitted. Didn't hit, the skinny and dark old man said. That spatial spirit tool is truly out of the ordinary, being able to block your attack, the short and fat old man said. It certainly is remarkable, the skinny and dark old man said. However, if this thing could be obtained by our sect, then whom would our sect need to fear? Ha! That's right. The tubby old man also rubbed his palms, laughing loudly. The problem was, how would they get that treasure? They didn't even know where Ling Han was, so they couldn't even kill him. 9 Clouds, you've dealt with that kid. What weaknesses could we take advantage of? The tubby old man said towards one side. Elder 9 Clouds surfaced and said respectfully, Elder Xianxia, that kid's martial arts talent is surprising, and he has a keen divine sense. I've wanted to attack time and time again, but have returned empty-handed. Humph, this is the North region where spiritual infant tier warriors are kings. This old man won't believe that even a flower blossom tier junior can't be dealt with. Elder Xianxia was determined. A shockingly chilling glare emitted from his eyes. Guard here, and once he appears, immediately take his life, the skinny and dark old man said. What? They were startled simultaneously as their gazes turned towards the valley's opening, seeing 8 old men tread over slowly. Within a few steps, they appeared before them. So it's Winter Moon Sect's fellow brothers. Elder Xianxia cupped his hands in obeisance. Humph. Who's calling you Winter Moon Sect's brothers? Sure, He Shun said coldly. Since you've seen us, hurry up and get lost? Get lost, Elder Xianxia sneered. Sure, He Shun, you do know what our sect is? The elder of our sect is an almighty shattering void tier elite. 7 senior sect guardians are all at the heaven tier, 33 law kings are at the deity transformation tier, and spiritual infant tier experts like us are in the hundreds. Hearing his words, Sure, He Shun and the other 7 were stifled. This force was too powerful. Spiritual infant tier experts were actually in the hundreds. Placed in the North region were all the spiritual infant tier warriors added up even near this amount. The Thousand Corpse sect proved to be an ancient large sect. Even just rising from the ashes, it had reached such a scale. So what? O family's elder rolled his eyes. North region's strongest elite is only the spiritual infant tier, and spiritual infant tier experts that cross over the region wall will have their cultivation, and even their life force, cut. Thousand Corpse sect's base should be in middle state, so why don't you request a deity transformation tier elite comes over? Our sect will unite the vast lands sooner or later, and when the time comes, if you guys don't want to become corpse soldiers, you'll have to live at our mercy, Elder Xianxia said loftily. A mere region wall. You think our sect's elites can't break through it? Sure, He Shun and the other 7 were all shocked. Right, how did the region wall come about? At most, it was the handiwork of a shattering void tier elite, and since that was so, how could it block another shattering void tier elite? Those who comply with us will thrive, and those who resist us will perish, the skinny and dark old man and Elder Xianxia shouted at the same time. Bullsh, T. Ao family's elder shouted angrily. Evil never prevails over good. If your sect master dares to take rash actions, would Middle States Heaven Sword Sect and Cloud Phoenix Sect not intervene to stop you guys? Stop with the nonsense. Either get lost or die. The other 7 spiritual infant tier warriors also looked cold. They were truly so awe-inspiringly righteous. But the thing on Ling Han was too precious, and they couldn't not contest for it. If it were simply an ordinary figure, they'd probably break into a quarrel with the Thousand Corpse Sect. The Thousand Corpse Sect was certainly loathed by everyone, but the key was that 2 people here weren't rats. They were large old tigers, and striking them could harm one's own bones, so who would be willing to start a fight? Elder Xianxia and the skinny and dark old man snorted, hallooing, as a ceaseless ear-piercing sounded, for caskets slid over from afar. Terrifying corpse chi filled the air, and could be felt from very far away. These 2 people planned to ambush Ling Han, so they obviously couldn't bring corpse soldiers, which would be too evident. Pung, 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 for corpse otters leapt out from the caskets. Their faces were clearly frightening, but a layer of light gold covered their bodies, having a sense of holiness that astonished people. First-tier gold-armored corpse, equivalent to the spiritual infant tier. There certainly was a reason why the Thousand Corpse Sect was feared by people. Corpse soldiers didn't fear death, ignored pain, and had astonishing defensive power. And the higher the tier Thousand Corpse Sect's disciples were at, the more corpse soldiers they could bring. There were clearly only 2 spiritual infant tier elites here, but they possessed the battle prowess of 6 spiritual infant tiers. And how about now? Elder Xianxia said loftily. Sure, he shun and the other 7 frowned. 8 against 6. They still had a firm advantage, but the problem was that even if they could win, they would have to pay a great price. Humph, everyone's target is that kid. Why not wait for him to appear and kill him together? When the time comes, everyone can seize the treasure. Sure, he shun said. That's settled then. The 2 spiritual infant tier experts of the Thousand Corpse Sect weren't willing to start a fight. After all, they were at a disadvantage in numbers. Once the 2 parties agreed, they withdrew their hostility and waited quietly for Ling Han to appear. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han sighed. With the attack earlier, the speck that Black Tower turned into also moved with the wind, floating to a distant place. Otherwise, if he threw out the god's skeletal remains, it would definitely be able to suppress the 10 spiritual infant tiers onto all 4s. However, would that be effective against the corpse soldiers? Ling Han didn't know. Corpse soldiers were already dead, equivalent to puppets. This thing's never been said to been able to be suppressed by any presence. What to do? Endure till they lose patience and disperse voluntarily. Ling Han immediately shook his head. These people might go search for Ling Dongxing. He decided to break through to the Flower Blossom tier as soon as possible, and then beat these bastards with Black Tower's power boost. He was extremely resolute and immediately set aside all thoughts, cultivating wholeheartedly. He was originally at the middle stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, so after 10 days of cultivation, he reached peak stage. Inside his dantian, the spiritual ocean was vast and mighty. 2 spiritual pedestals rose from within it, infinitely high and extremely magnificent. It'd be best to use a few months to perfect the tier and break through after there can be no more improvements. However, there isn't so much time now. I must immediately begin charging at the Flower Blossom tier, Ling Han said. Hong, long, long, the bones in his body crackled, as if the chants of Tao. Lu Yutong and the others sat cross-legged nearby, as this was of great benefit to them as well. Crossing into the Flower Blossom tier from the spiritual pedestal tier was a qualitative change. On the spiritual pedestal, a martial arts celestial flower would bloom, and one would transcend the mortal limit from then on. Why could Flower Blossom tier warriors allocate the spirit chi of heaven and earth to add to their attacks? It was because of the martial arts celestial flower that could draw the spirit chi of heaven and earth, as if a spirit base. However, the spirit base absorbed spirit chi to convert it into one's own origin power, but the martial arts celestial flower directly added to the attack. But how did one produce a martial arts celestial flower? Plant the martial arts celestial flower seed on the spiritual pedestal and wait for it to bud and grow into a celestial flower. One would then be a flower blossom tier expert. However, the first step wasn't to plant the seed, but to select the kind of a martial arts seed. Planting one martial arts seed, I can thereby blossom a celestial flower and cross into the flower blossom tier. In the former life, I planted a spiritual seed of fire, and after the celestial flower blossomed, I could invoke the fire spiritual chi within heaven and earth. However, it's said that some can plant down 3 martial arts seeds and blossom 3 celestial flowers in the end, being called 3 flowers crown. I possess a 5-element spirit base. Why not try planting 5 seedlings? Martial arts seeds can only be planted at peak stage of the spiritual pedestal tier, so I must make a decision. No need to consider. I walk the path of the strongest, so I'll plant 5 martial arts seeds. Ling Han's expression was resolute as he began to extract from the 5 elements Chaos Lotus's source. This spirit base corresponded to the elements gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. So with these as seeds, the martial arts celestial flower he blossomed could also possess 5 different elements. At that time, he would be able to draw from 5 types of spiritual chi in an attack, and that attack power would obviously be formidable. However, stripping from the spirit base's source element was painful, like being cut by a saber, and made his expression twist involuntarily, revealing an intensely pained expression. Lu Yutong and the other girl's heart ached, especially Yu Hongchang's. Her son was flesh that fell from her own body, making her tears almost fall out. Lu Yutong and Li Sichan grabbed onto her hands on each side, calming her slightly, extracting the source element of a spirit base. This process was extremely painful but not dangerous. Ling Han did it once in his previous life, but he had a fire spirit base back then, and only needed to extract it once to finish. Now it was 5 times. Fortunately, this process was finally completed anyway. Having removed the source elements, the 5 elements Chaos Lotus seemed dispirited and inert, somewhat hurt at the core, but it only needed some time to rest and could still recuperate. Also, since Ling Han was also a heaven-grade alchemist, would he still fear a damaged spirit base? Ling Han began to plant the spirit seeds, but there were only 5 and they couldn't be broken up into parts. He considered it momentarily and decided to care for the Earth spiritual ocean's spiritual pedestal. As for the other half, that would be for later. Spiritual pedestals were the best soil for spirit seeds. After burying the spirit seed, to let the spirit seed bud and blossom a celestial flower, massive amounts of energy needed to be provided, as well as corresponding martial arts comprehension. These 2 things were the fertilizer to grow the spirit seed. Neither could be missing. Ling Han began to chug down spirit medicine and spiritual liquid. As for marital arts comprehension, this he wasn't missing. Even if he planted 5 seeds this time, he was still much at ease, having enough comprehension to aid him back to the heaven tier. When the martial arts seed would bud, how long it would grow, and what celestial flower would bloom, these were all uncertain. Depending on whether there was enough fertilizer, it would be possible to succeed in 1 to 2 days, but if there weren't enough fertilizer, it might be several years, several tens of years, or hundreds of years. There wouldn't be over hundreds of years, since lifespan was a mere 100 years. If one didn't enter the flower blossom tier, one would already be dead. Ling Han, of course, had enough fertilizer. Although there weren't medicinal pills that could make one directly cross into the flower blossom tier, there were too many tonic things, and he didn't wish to cross into it directly. Advancing into the flower blossom tier was to comprehend the Tao of heaven and earth, which was of great benefit, so why miss it? He kept eating, and the 5 spirit seeds soon budded, breaking through the mud and swaying on the spiritual pedestal. The strange thing was that on top of the spiritual pedestal in the heaven spiritual ocean, 5 spirit seeds also budded. What happened? He'd clearly only planted 5 spirit seeds. But this was a good thing, wasn't it? Ling Han didn't have time to care now, simply nurturing the 5 spirit seeds diligently. As they kept growing, the spirit seeds were covered with vein-like patterns, shining resplendently. This was Ling Han's comprehension of martial arts. The spirit seeds grew very fast, and only after a day's effort grew into a firmament tree with a flower bud on top. The celestial flower's blossoming was imminent. Once the celestial flower blossomed, Ling Han would officially advance into the flower blossom tier. Now, well, he was the same as when he'd planted the seed, only at half-step flower blossom tier. Ling Han sat cross-legged. This was the most arduous step and needed the provision of terrifying amounts of energy. On the contrary, martial intent had already densely covered the celestial flower, divine patterns intertwining. It was enough. Eat, eat. Ling Han devoured ravenously like his life depended on it. A Tao fire rose within his body, burning his body and nourishing it ceaselessly with energy. Damn, how come that much energy still isn't enough? He cried out inwardly. When he'd broken through to the flower blossom tier in the past, he used at most 1/100th of that energy, but now it was 100 times more, as if filling in a bottomless pit with no sign of it being enough. He came to a realization. This was because he cultivated indestructible Heaven's Scroll. His physique's toughness was equivalent to rare metals of the same tier, and the problem was with same tier. Since he wanted to advance into the flower blossom tier, his physique obviously had to increase to the hardness of a 6th-tier rare metal. But this couldn't possibly appear out of thin air. He obviously had to absorb sufficient amounts of energy to increase his physique. Could this not require massive amounts of energy? Ling Han was now equivalent to a human-shaped spirit tool. An increase from 5th-tier spirit tool to a 6th-tier one. Was this change not great? Then continue eating. Ling Han turned into Hu Niu the Chowhound. Lu Yutong and the others stared with eyes wide open. Are you breaking through or turning into a hungry ghost's reincarnation? Even Hu Niu was somewhat shocked, muttering, seems to eat more than Niu, as expected of Niu's Ling Han. He ate for 2 days and 2 nights, finally filling this hole. 5 flower buds trembled lightly, as they'd blossom at any time. On the Heaven Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal, the 5 celestial flowers were also the same. It was like a mirror. The changes of the Earth Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal would be replicated on the Heaven Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal, appearing extremely miraculous. Thankfully that was so. Ling Han didn't have any spare spirit seeds to let 2 spiritual pedestals blossom celestial flowers simultaneously. Slowly, the celestial flower blossomed. Dang, 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 the sound of Tao resonated within the Black Tower, thought-provoking. Lu Yutong and the others, regardless of each person's cultivation, all entered into a state of enlightenment. Observing someone's breakthrough, especially to the flower blossom tier, a great threshold of surpassing mortals, had many great benefits. Of course, Ling Han was definitely the one with the greatest changes. On the Earth Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal, the 5 martial arts celestial flowers blossomed one by one. An azure flower represented wood, a red flower represented fire, a white flower represented gold, a black flower represented water, and a gold flower represented earth. The flower of 5 elements blossomed all together. The flower blossom tier, Heaven Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal, also blossomed 5-colored celestial flowers. They swayed slightly even though there was no wind, emitting a presence that transcended mortals. Ling Han opened his eyes abruptly. He finally returned to the flower blossom tier, an important point. In some sense, this represented that he took the first step in returning to the pinnacle. Young Master Han. Everyone was roused, approaching one after another. Son, were you in pain? Yu Hongchang pulled on Ling Han's arm and looked at him from top to bottom. Despite seeing Ling Han's pained expression earlier, she couldn't come up to ask and kept being concerned. No, all is smooth going, Ling Han said with a smile. Congrats, young Master Han. Zhu Wujiu and Guang Yuan stood behind by a lot. They obviously didn't dare to contend with these women, but they were also very moved. It had only been so long, and an 18-year-old youngster had already become a super elite of the flower blossom tier. Placed in the desolate north, that was definitely an invincible existence. Ling Han nodded and said, wait for me, take care of some trash first, and we'll drink later tonight. With that said, he stepped out of the Black Tower. Boy! Elder Tianche and the dark and skinny old man assaulted him right away. Behind them were 4 corpse soldiers that emitted a golden sheen, but the 8 spiritual infant tier elites from the Winter Moon sect chose to sit by and watch. Apparently, they had qualms about the god's corpse in Ling Han's hands, and without seeing Ling Han use it, they definitely didn't dare to charge forward. That was simply giving away their lives. How unfortunate. He originally wanted to entrap a bit more people. When Elder Xianxia and the other old man were close, Ling Han raised his hand, and a god's skeletal remains were unleashed. This old fellow brother probably died for countless of years and wouldn't mind being tossed about repeatedly like this. Old brother, I'll definitely give you a grand burial in the future, Ling Han said inwardly. Pa, 2 great thousand corpse sect elders immediately dropped to the ground. Under the suppression of a god's presences, they couldn't resist at all. However, the 4 corpse soldiers were not a bit affected. They were without consciousness to begin with, so how could they be suppressed by a god's presence? For gold-armored corpses were spiritual infant tier existences. How terrifying were they? Ling Han didn't use Black Tower's power boost immediately, and instead activated the Thunder Battle Armor. Instantly, a flash of lightning spread open and formed a lightning barrier around him. He immediately retreated. He wasn't so crazy as to fight 4 spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers head-on. Flashes of memories revived in his mind, while Ling Han's feet began to move naturally. Demon Fairy Step. This was a heaven tier movement art. It could only be used after advancing into the Flower Blossom tier, not belonging to mortals. In his previous life, he specialized in cultivating the Demon Fairy Step, using it even at the heaven tier. A feeling of nostalgia welled up, and Ling Han couldn't help but feel bold and courageous, wandering with ease through the attacks of 4 great spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers. Could a high-level heaven-grade movement art not be swift? North Region's martial arts level was low. Even the strongest sects like the Winter Moon sect and the Beast Emperor sect had arts that were only medium-level Earth grade. Their skills were also the same, being at most high-level Earth grade. Could these things be compared to a heaven-grade skill? Corpse soldiers' greatest forte was their tolerance in taking punishment, not fearing death nor pain, but they only relied on their instincts in battle. If they could use arts and skills like when they were alive, then that would truly be against reason. So how could such attacks possibly deal with Ling Han, who used the Demon Fairy Step? Could this be the legacy that the brat acquired from the 12 palaces? It's truly amazing to wander easily surrounded by the attacks of 4 corpse soldiers and only be swept occasionally by the dispersing energy. But the battle armor he wears is enough to block it. Huh! Why does this battle armor looks like the Thunder Battle Armor? No way, the Thunder Battle Armor can't be revitalized. And wasn't it in one of our disciples' hands, called Han something? Han Lin. Hiss. Winter Moon sect's 8 spiritual infant tier warriors gasped in astonishment simultaneously. Wasn't Han Lin read backwards Ling Han? Such. They were actually deceived by Ling Han, swindled of a treasure from their Winter Moon sect. The power of this Thunder Battle Armor worn on Ling Han could even block the aftereffects of a spiritual infant tier's power. How valuable was it? We have to get it back, the 8 people said all together, their eyes burning with desire. Hee. Under the attacks of 4 corpse soldiers, that boy is unknowingly moving further away from the terrifying corpse bones. Great. Once he's slightly further away, we'll take the chance to attack. All right. We have to kill him in one strike this time. The 8 people observed and waited for the opportunity. Ling Han seemed to be kindled by the fight and forgot that there were still 8 spiritual infant tier elites ambushing him. But this was understandable. He was being attacked by 4 spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers, so how could he have the room to look left and right? He kept retreating, further and further away from the god's corpse. Now, Ao family's elder and the others dashed out. Ling Han had now escaped form the god's corpse's range of influence, and it was the best chance to attack. Show, 5 in the front, 3 in the back. They started attacking one after another. I was waiting for you guys, Ling Han sneered. He had a heaven-tier divine sense, so how could he possibly have neglected these old bastards? This was the battle strategy he drew up, moving further away from the god's corpse to lure these old bastards out. Hearing those words, Ao family's elder and the other 7 felt their hearts palpitate as an uneasy feeling welled up inside them without any obvious reason. This was an instinctive reaction, and after getting to the spiritual infant tier, they trusted their instincts the most. Thus, they immediately halted, wanting to turn to retreat. Too late. Ling Han raised his right hand and another god's corpse was thrown out. Wang, a terrifying presence, swirled by, and the 5 spiritual infant tier cultivators that charged in front immediately fell to the ground. While the other 3 staggered, they still escaped the divine presence's area of influence. After all, they were far and weren't influenced much. What a pity! Ling Han cried out inwardly. Still, Ao family's elder and Xianxia were amongst the 5 people who fell to the ground, making him very pleased. These were the people he definitely had to kill. He shifted on his feet with the demon birth sword already unleashed, attacking towards Xianxia. Don't you dare! Afar, the 3 spiritual infant tier elites stamped their feet hastily. The Winter Moon sect had a total of 9 spiritual infant tier elites. If 5 were to die here, their strength would decrease sharply by half, almost dropping out of the 4 strongest forces. What don't I dare to do? Ling Han coldly, slicing with his sword. Pooh! Xianxia's head was cut off and blood instantly surged out violently. A dignified spiritual infant tier elite, one among the strongest beings of the North region, actually died in such a stupid way, dying without being able to execute any arts and lying on the ground like a dead dog to be slaughtered as one pleased. How different were they then from an insignificant soldier? Xianxia's eyes were wide open, his face ashen. Knowing he was about to die, it was full of grievance. Ling Han pushed on. With 4 gold-armored corpses chasing him, if he let them attack as they pleased, the thunder battle armor probably wouldn't save him. After all, how could spiritual infant tier beings be underestimated? Ao family's elder revealed a panic-stricken expression. He didn't want to die and wanted even less to die in the hands of a small figure. Ling Han sneered and said, "I'm a heaven-grade alchemist. Me killing you personally, is that not enough for you to boast about?" The sword swept by and the Ao family's elder was beheaded, passing away. He leapt repeatedly, reaping all 5 spiritual infant tier warriors' lives, then killed the 2 people from the 1,000 corpse sect at the end. Under the suppression of the god's corpse, these people didn't even have the strength to beg for mercy and could only await death, dying extremely resentfully. Spiritual infant tier elites, beings that should be invincible in the North region. Even if they couldn't win, they could leave leisurely. Spiritual infant tier elites wanting to kill spiritual infant tier elites? Hard. But now they were like wheat easily reaped. Once Elder Xianxia and the skinny dark elder died, the 4 gold-armored corpses immediately escaped control. They no longer focused on Ling Han, and instead were filled with killing intent towards any being with flesh, craving to devour blood and flesh. This was the instinct of corpse soldiers. Ling Han sighed. Once the god corpse was out, he could easily control the situation, but it was ineffective towards the 4 already dead corpse soldiers. He originally could not use Black Tower's power boost, but with the cultivation of only Flower Blossom tier, how could he possibly stop these 4 corpse soldiers going on a mass killing spree? Spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers had extremely tough physiques and could only be killed by many spiritual infant tier elites at least. If they were released in the desolate north, people would be definitely plunged into misery and suffering. "I can't bear the burden of this karma," Ling Han said faintly. "Small tower." Hong, Small Tower immediately primed Black Tower, pouring ceaseless energy towards him and making his cultivation skyrocket. The first layer of the spiritual infant tier. Pooh, Winter Moon sects remaining 3 old monsters of the spiritual infant tier almost stared their eyeballs out. They originally thought that Ling Han's Flower Blossom tier cultivation was a state after taking pills, and he was nothing more than a spiritual pedestal tier youngster. However, Ling Han's cultivation rocketed to the spiritual infant tier all of a sudden. They finally realized that Ling Han had actually advanced into the Flower Blossom tier. This youngster was too terrifying. Ling Han temporarily didn't pay attention to those 3 people. The 4 corpse soldiers had to be demolished. This scourge was too great. As the demon birth sword was raised, Ling Han executed mysterious 3000. For 1,000 sword lights waved, Inside Ling Han's dantian, 10 martial arts celestial flowers undulated slightly, drawing heaven and earth spirit chi to add to the might of the sword lights. Hong! The sword art's power instantly grew drastically by 100-fold. This was too terrifying. Poo, piu, 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 as sword lights swept by, a gold-armored corpse was directly slashed into pieces. A 10th-tier spirit tool coupled with the mysterious 3000 and the boost of 10 celestial flowers resulted in this surprising effect. Even the gold-armored corpse was almost instantly killed. Winter Moon Sect's 3 old monsters looked at each other, seeing extreme fear on each other's faces. Without demur, they scrammed. This youngster was too strong. Strong to the point that they couldn't even have the courage to fight him anymore. Better return back to the sect where there was the protection of the mountain protecting formation, which was at the deity transformation tier level. Wait another 100 years or so. As the Winter Moon sect had deep roots, they'd recover from the day's casualties. Ling Han didn't chase. He only wanted to kill Ao family's elder and Shi Shun, and once these 2 people died, he didn't really care to kill the others. After he recovered slightly, he fired Mysterious 3000 again, slaying another corpse soldier. If they were martial artists, they'd definitely run if they saw 2 companions killed. But Vorp's soldiers didn't fear death. They only had the instinct of devouring flesh and blood. Since Ling Han was a living spirit, not to mention whether he was only at the spiritual infant or the flower blossom tier, the corpses would still charge up even if he were at the shattering void or heaven tier. In a little over 10 minutes, the 4 gold-armored corpses were all annihilated by Ling Han. After Ling Han caught his breath, he stored the 2 god-tier corpses into the Black Tower. The god-tier oppression decreased a little every time it was used, and whether it could suppress spiritual infant-tier elites next time was uncertain. He summoned everyone out from the Black Tower and walked towards the fallen Moon Gorge. Yu Hongchang couldn't help but be excited. Back then, when she and Ling Dongxing came here, they were caught up with by Aofeng. Then, she was separated with her husband and son. In a flash, 18 years had gone by. Lu Yutong and Li Sichan hurriedly supported her from the left and right, as if treating her like a normal 70 to 80-year-old lady. Seeing this, Ling Han shook his head. Ling Han swept the battlefield and stored the spatial rings of the 7 spiritual infant-tier cultivators into the Black Tower. Inside the rings were mostly origin crystals. Some were 4 stars. There were also some arts and skills, but none of them qualified for Ling Han to skim through them. The best was medium-level Earth-grade trash. They entered the fallen Moon Gorge and arrived at the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. Informed that a heaven-grade alchemist arrived, all alchemists came greeting on their knees. Even Yong Longzhang and the other 2 Earth-grade alchemists were no exception, extremely devout as they lay prostrated on the ground. Ling Han helped up the 3 old men one by one and said with a smile, "I already refined the Restore Spirit pill, but I'll refine another medium-level Earth-grade medicinal pill later. All of you come observe." "Thank you, Master Ling." The 3 old men were extremely touched. Having become a heaven-tier alchemist, Ling Han didn't need to care about how they felt, but he still did, making them feel extremely touched and warm inside the hearts. Ling Han only stayed at the Star Brilliance Palace Hall for a day. After he finished refining the pill, he set out for Rain Country. He was in a hurry to let his parents reunite, and wanted even more to see how Ling Dongxing's current situation was. In order to hasten on the journey, he stored everyone inside the Black Tower and used the Demon Fairy Step, dashing towards Diyuan City. After only 3 days, he arrived at Diyuan City. He summoned everyone from the Black Tower again. Ling Han first went to see the Yuan King. "Master Ling." Seeing Ling Han, the Yuan King hurriedly cupped his hands in obeisance. This was a high-level black-grade alchemist whose status was higher than his. He clearly didn't know that Ling Han not only became a heaven-grade alchemist, but also far surpassed him in martial arts, advancing into the flower blossom tier. Ling Han naturally didn't bring out his identity to pressure him. In reality, the status of a high-level black-grade alchemist was great enough here. If he truly said he were a heaven-grade alchemist and a flower blossom tier elite, the Yuan King would properly slump onto the ground in fear. He laughed and said, "The Yuan King, haven't seen you for a year. How's everything?" "Thanks to Master, all is well." the Yuan King said with a smile. No kidding, the new Reign Emperor cared greatly for the Ling family, and even brought the Yuan King manners status up with them. Ling Han nodded and said, "How's my father? A few days ago, several foreigners came to investigate the whereabouts of your father, so I acted on my own and moved your father and the Ling family to a new place," the Yuan King replied. "Very good." Ling Han pat him on the shoulder, then reached out and spread his hands over the table as several bottles of medicinal pills instantly appeared. "The Yuan King, I'm in a rush to see my father. Accept these things, I'll be going now." The Yuan King obviously expressed his thanks, and hurriedly told Ling Han where the Ling family currently lived. He assumed that Ling Han was still a high-level black-grade alchemist and the medicinal pills he gifted were definitely remarkable. However, when Ling Han left, he picked up the medicinal pills to examine them, and was shocked to the point of almost slumping onto the ground. My goodness! Every single one was of earth grade, and each bottle had the effects and taboos clearly written on it, making the Yuan King tremble all over. He had hoped to cross into the spiritual pedestal tier, and now he definitely could. He couldn't help but be overcome with emotion. Looking after the Ling family was as simple as the lift of a hand, but it now was exchanged into such substantial rewards. Master Ling, a great person. Master Ling didn't seem to care at all. Earth-grade medicinal pills were too normal for him. He was refining them offhandedly. After he requited the favor, he immediately went to find his mother and the others, leaving the Yuan city. Heading west, they arrived at a small, remote town. Ling Dongxing and the others lived here. The closer they got, the more nervous Yu Hongchang was. She kept touching the corners of her eyes and hair, worried if she got a lot older, and whether Ling Dongxing would recognize her at first sight, feeling both excited and complicated. After they entered the town, they arrived at a large courtyard with its doors closed. Ling Han went up to knock, and in a short while, a voice came from inside. "Whom are you looking for?" "I'm Ling Han." A thump instantly sounded from inside. Apparently that person tripped. The door then opened as a middle-aged man shouted to Ling Han in surprise, "Young Master Han, you've returned." He was Ling family's servant. Previously, when the Chung family almost destroyed the Ling family, he escaped and later still worked at the Ling family, loyal and devoted. Ling Han revealed a smile and said, "I'm back. Where's father?" "The old master is in the drawing room receiving guests," that servant said. "What guests?" Ling Han asked without thinking. "A matchmaker that's talking to the old master about a marriage," the servant said. Yu Hongchang was originally nervous, but as she heard that, she blew up, stepping forward quickly to ask, "Oh, your old master is taking a wife?" That servant didn't recognize Yu Hongchang, but since she was with Ling Han, he naturally didn't dare to be negligent and said, "The old master already lost his wife for many years, and we servants hope that the old master can remarry, having someone as company." "That's great. I sure want to see it." Yu Hongchan's face turned cold. Taking large strides right through the garden, she started walking towards the drawing room. The servant wanted to stop her. "You're a guest and can't act recklessly, okay?" Ling Han hurriedly held him back and said smilingly, "Uncle Fu, you'd better pray for yourself." "Young Master Han, what do you mean?" Uncle Fu was puzzled. "That's my mother," Ling Han said with a smile. Uncle Fu was startled. He thought with doubt. Wasn't young Master Han's mother the old master's wife? But didn't the mistress die long ago? Oh my, could she not have died? He was immediately freaked out. He said that the old master remarry in front of the mistress. If the mistress held a grudge against him in the future, wouldn't that be terrible? Ling Han laughed loudly and patted him on the shoulder. It's nothing. Don't worry. Young Master Han, don't give me a hard time like that, not telling me right away," Uncle Fu said with a bitter face. It'd be strange if a grudge wasn't held against him. Yu Hongchang obviously wasn't such a person, and Ling Han was only joking with Uncle Fu. Where would one get such a loyal and devout servant? He, Lu Yutong, and the others didn't enter. After a short while, a 40-year-old woman ran out with a palm print on her face. From the size of it, it definitely was Yu Hongchang who did it. This matchmaker lady probably spoke without much thought inappropriately, angering Yu Hongchang. However, only giving her a slap and not breaking her head, Yu Hongchang's character and conduct could be seen. An indistinct cry sounded from the drawing room. Ling Han pondered and said, "Find a place to stay first. My father and my mother probably have no time for us today." "Why?" Hunyo asked, tilting her head. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, "They're busy being intimate." Liu Tong and the other girls blushed, while Hunyo held onto Ling Han's neck and said in a sweet voice, "Ling Han, be intimate with Nyo." Ling Han instantly retreated in defeat. As expected, only in the afternoon of the second day did Ling Dong Xian finally have time to call in Ling Han. Yu Hongchang snuggled up by the former's side, without a bit of the previous day's lioness look. As the father and son met, they obviously hugged each other tightly, shedding a few manly tears. The family spoke for a while and naturally conversed about martial arts. According to Yu Hongchang's wish, there was no need for revenge. Living happily as a family was better than anything else. However, Ling Han and Ling Dongxing desired revenge, and wouldn't possibly let go of the enmity with Ao Feng. Ling Han specially only incapacitated Ao Feng's spirit base, just so that Ling Dongxing could personally kill him. "Father, your spirit base has recovered now, right?" Ling Han asked. "It's recovered." Ling Dongxing's was in high spirits. He not only recovered his spirit base, but also touched the threshold of crossing into the gushing spring tier and would break through soon. "Oh, right. The alchemist you asked to come is still staying here." Oh, Lu Jitong was actually still living here. No wonder he wasn't to be seen at the North Pill Pavilion. Ling Han nodded and said, "I incapacitated Ao Feng's spirit base and killed Ao family's elder. Father, you only have to cross into the flower blossom tier before you can personally take revenge." Ling Dongxing was shocked. Ao family's elder, a spiritual infant tier being, was actually killed by his son? But how could Ling Han possibly lie to him? He couldn't help but laugh loudly. This son was too accomplished, making him extremely joyful. Ling Han and Ling Dongxing discussed their following plans. The news that Ling Han received the coordinates to a god's treasure trove soon spread throughout the entire world, and there were definitely countless people in the dark that wanted to murder him for gain. Ling Dongxing and the others would become his Achilles' heel, and there would definitely be lots of forces that wanted to capture them to threaten Ling Han. Thus, they planned to move and conceal their names for a time. Ling Han also planned to use this time to increase his father's strength and accumulate his own cultivation. From the spiritual pedestal tier to the flower blossom tier, he rushed it too much and had to stabilize his base so as to avoid severe problems in the future. Yu Hongchang obviously had no suggestions. It was enough for her that the family was reunited. Her demands were extremely simple. Move! Ling Han stored everyone into the Black Tower. This way they would be untraceable. After leaving a letter for the Yuan King, Ling Han treaded through the air, leaving Rain Country. After hesitating slightly, he chose to head towards Fire Country. Crossing a range of mountains and rivers, Ling Han appeared at a small town at Fire Country's border. It was interlocked with Wind Country's territory. This Baoyang town was an unregulated area, shockingly poor and a place beyond the law. Nobody would find it strange if new faces appeared here. People hoed their own potatoes and wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Ling Han bought a large courtyard and let everyone out. This courtyard was truly large and came with an extremely large vegetable garden. If they raised some poultry, they could be almost self-sufficient. At first, there was obviously no supply of food in the mansion, but Ling Han had the Black Tower, where there was plenty of ingredients. When he left in the future, the vegetable garden would have grown, and no one in the outside would know exactly how many people lived here. Everyone lived in seclusion. In reality, the desolate north had nothing much to show as it was too poorly developed. Everyone immersed themselves in cultivation. Ling Dong Xian wasted 18 years, and now that his spirit base was recovered, there would naturally be a rebound period. In addition to Ling Han's not stinting continuous provision spiritual medicines, beast meat, and spiritual liquid, his cultivation progress speed could only be described as crazy. Ling Han planned to stay here for half a year, then find Yin Hong at Extreme Yang City, attending the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's whatever contest together. He would just disguise himself a little at that time anyway. If Yin Hong sold him out, he would just see it as his error in judgment of her. But he wouldn't have to worry about any life-threatening dangers. This matter was something he promised, and he definitely would keep his word. Lu Yutong and the others progressed slowly at first because they had just broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier. The explosive period had passed and would naturally transform into a stable period. Besides, a continuous explosive growth would actually not have any benefits to martial arts cultivation. After a peaceful life of a dozen days, Yu Hongchang was discontented. What was with her son's situation? There were obviously 3 exquisite girls, and you just look at them like that. What a waste and shame. The old lady ordered that Ling Han had to take time every day to spend with the girls. That was his mother, so Ling Han could only follow the orders. The first was Lu Yutong. The two left the mansion and strolled outside the small town. The gentle breeze swept by, and she was like a jade in the setting sun, as the evening glow fell on Lu Yutong's face that reflected a fiery red brilliance, making for an extremely touching sight. Io! Lu Yutong suddenly staggered and fell towards the ground. Ling Han hurriedly reached out to hold her. What happened? He asked. Lu Yutong leaned on his body and said in a low and somewhat quivering voice, I twisted my ankle. Twisted her ankle? A dignified spiritual pedestal tier expert would twist her ankle while walking? Ling Han immediately guessed. She was just pretending. But did he have the nerve to expose her? The hardest thing to bear was a beauty's favor, so he could only pretend to be a fool. Then let's go back, he said. Yes. Lu Yutong nodded and leaned in Ling Han's embrace. Smelling the intense manliness that emitted from his body, she almost fainted, feeling like her mind was about to explode and couldn't possibly have any other thoughts. With each step, she felt like walking amongst the clouds, without any weight at all. Her cheeks were getting redder and redder, more beautiful than ever. As they walked, she mustered up the courage and hugged Ling Han's waist, while her head leaned tightly onto Ling Han's chest. A sense of extreme happiness welled up inside, and she wanted to keep walking like this forever. But in the end, they still walked home. When Ling Han let her go, Lu Yutong was so embarrassed that she took to her heels, making Ling Han burst into laughter. Wasn't your ankle twisted? How could you still run so quick? This acting was way too unprofessional. On the second day, it was Li Sichan that he had to keep company. Oh hiya! As they walked, Li Sichan also tripped and fell. Well, her ankle was twisted too. You guys were taught by the same master, right? Ling Han assisted her back, thinking that this was definitely his mother's idea. Otherwise, these two women couldn't possibly be so shameless. Moreover, they already knew each other for 2 years, so how come they never twisted their ankles before and all did now? The third day, it was Zhu Xian'er. Ling Han sighed and said, You won't twist your ankle while walking too, right? There's got to be some originality. Can't always just twist your ankle. There's no sincerity in that at all. Zhu Xian'er was somewhat at a loss. How come this wasn't as planned? She was rather smart though. Pa, and her exquisite body softened, falling towards Ling Han. You couldn't possibly have the heart to let me fall onto the ground, right? Ling Han certainly didn't want to catch her, but thinking that if his mother found out, he'd get terribly scolded, he had to reach to protect this flower, embracing Zhu Xian'er. Instantly, a splendid sensation assaulted him, making his heart palpitate ceaselessly. This was a remarkably beautiful lady, who could touch the hearts of the prodigies in the middle state even with her face covered. Could be imagined how powerful her charm was. Ling Han instantly felt an uncontrollable urge. The longer he was in contact with Zhu Xian'er, the harder it was for him to fend against her charm. He was about to push Zhu Xian'er aside, but this exquisite beauty hugged onto him tightly. Her stunning body completely snugged closely, making him feel clearly just how alluring her physique was. Brother Han, she said in a low and passionate voice. Ling Han almost had a nosebleed. A lady as beautiful as a celestial fairy leaned in his embrace and let out such a touching voice. If he didn't react at all, then he would be way too unmanly. Xianxia knows that you have someone hidden in your heart, but Xianxia doesn't care. It would be enough as long as Brother Han leaves a place in his heart for Xianxia in the future. Zhu Xianxia said with a dreamlike voice. Ling Han's heart palpitated fiercely. Were there words of love more touching than these in the world? He certainly couldn't let go of heavenly divine Phoenix Maiden, even after a millennium. He still thought that after she became a god, she could live all the way till now, and didn't consider the possibility that she could be in love with someone else. Under these conditions, he couldn't possibly get a second girl. And this was why he didn't have any strange thoughts all along despite interacting with Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan for such a long time. However, Zhu Xian'er spread out a great net of tender passion, making him fall into it calmly and collectedly. What a truly alluring woman. Ling Han embraced her and said, "You might have to wait for over 100 years. This wasn't exaggerated. It might be fast for him to return to the heaven tier, and from the heaven tier to the shattering void tier, then from the shattering void tier to the god tier. The time needed was uncertain. However, 100 years for that wasn't a long time. Xian'er is willing to wait," Zhu Xian'er said in a tender voice. She would definitely cross into the flower blossom tier, and at least possess 300 years of life. Waiting for over 100 years was equivalent to being 30 years old. Moreover, following Ling Han and with her talents, the flower blossom tier definitely wasn't her limit. The spiritual infant tier, the deity transformation tier, and even the heaven tier and the shattering void were possible. Since even Zhu Xian'er was willing to wait, what other reason did Ling Han have to say no? If he dared, his mother would whip him. This would be how things will be then. Ling Han hugged the stunning beauty. Neither of them spoke as a light warmth dispersed between them. Zhu Xian'er was very smart, not asking who that person was in Ling Han's heart, not contesting nor comparing, simply fighting silently for a world that belonged to her. The atmosphere was cozy and sweet. "Brother Han, what's that thing hidden in your pants? Hard, and somewhat poking at Xian'er?" After hugging for a while, Zhu Xian'er suddenly popped with such a question, and reached to touch it. On the fourth day, Hu Niu waited there. After Ling Han rolled his eyes, the little girl laughed loudly with her hands on her hips, dragging Ling Han for grilled meat. She had no consistency in doing things. A while ago, she said she would strive to cultivate, but after a few days she began slacking off. What others couldn't accept was that her cultivation actually still increased so quickly. She broke through to the flower blossom tier without a sound, and her battle prowess was unpredictably strong. These days he rested peacefully and forgot all pressure, simply enjoying his parents' affection and the tender sentiments of the young beauties. Ling Han, however, gained surprising improvements on martial arts. The sword chi he grasped reached 19 flashes, a period of explosive growth. But the 20th flash was another hurdle which would probably have him stuck for a while. Moreover, he also finally grasped the 2 bone patterns, one acquired from the old vicious mongoose and the other from the unnameable beast king. The vicious mongoose's bone patterns were a supportive art, though even Ling Han didn't know whether it could be called an art per se. It was simply a spiritual pattern, but it could be attached onto a sword, greatly increasing the sword chi's destructive power. It had no offensive capacity at all in itself and could only be characterized as a supportive attribute. This was very practical, and Ling Han even felt that its effects surpassed the other bone patterns. The other was an art that could fire out a cold ice blade, but Ling Han already grasped the mystical power annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, which was relatively powerful as a long-distance attack. But thinking about it, annihilating Dragon Star Arrow needed accumulation for a certain amount of time before it could be fired, and it was actually an attack launched over extreme distances, while this cold ice blade was a medium to short-range attack. So it just so happened to be supplementary for it. Anyways, more techniques weren't a burden. Each art and skill might have a place where its uses could be displayed. Next, he was going to middle state, and the mysterious 3000 definitely couldn't be used recklessly there. Otherwise, if the old monsters of the Heaven Sword sect were drawn out, it wouldn't be a laughing matter. Thus, he flipped through some skills and found a sword technique. The Desolate Hell Sword. Ling Han acquired it from an ancient site, It was said to be the legacy of a strange force called ancient monks. This set of sword techniques expiated men, beasts, and all people. It had a total of 8 styles. The first 7 styles were merciful, leaving one with a feeble thread of life, used mainly for defense, and only the last style was extremely ruthless, like becoming a demon. It was of course a heaven-grade skill, the only heaven-grade sword technique that Ling Han grasped. Thus, even though this sword technique was somewhat strange, Ling Han still decided to cultivate it. A heaven-grade skill was something where one had to grasp its intent during cultivation in order to connect with the martial intent and form a link between the preceding and following styles, fully unleashing the power of the technique. Thus, to fully grasp the desolate hell sword, Ling Han needed to be compassionate for mankind when executing the first 7 styles, and at the last style he had to turn into the Azura demon king of Avicii, cutting down all things. He practiced the sword technique and contemplated the ancestor state of mind when creating this sword technique, deepening his understanding of the way of the sword much more. However, cultivating someone else's technique, no matter how strong it is still using someone else's invention. Each person has their own path, and even if it's the same path of a king, a heartless path, it couldn't possibly be completely the same. So, to be the strongest, I must create a technique of my own. Like Rain Emperor, who created Son of Heaven fist technique. Although it might not be the strongest fist technique, it was still the most suitable fist technique for Rain Emperor. As his tier increased, the fist technique's power would also increase, and at last reach expert mastery depending on the heights Rain Emperor could go. In this life, since I'm focused on the sword, I'll create a sword technique that belongs to my own sword path, and it'll increase as my tier increases. I had this thought before, but haven't ever put it into practice. Since I've now advanced into the Flower Blossom tier, it should be brought on the daily schedule. Ling Han cultivated the desolate hell sword and deduced his sword path, accumulating his understanding in preparation for a day when a sudden enlightenment might bring him inspiration. It was not only him. After Lu Yutong and the others experienced a moderate period, they then started to leap forward again. Although it wasn't as exaggerated as in his case, it was still faster than most people. Ling Han obviously attended to Ling Dongxing the most. After only 3 months, Ling Dongxing crossed into the spiritual ocean tier. Such speed was truly terrifying. Blindly pursuing higher cultivation wasn't good, as it was somewhat like pulling seedlings to help them grow. It would hurt a martial artist's roots, influencing their future potential. However, Ling Han had no other way since his father wasn't young, and if he didn't reach the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier to leave enough to charge at the Flower Blossom tier, then Ling Dongxing would only have a mere 100 years of life. Finally having parents in this life and having the confidence to become a god, Ling Han obviously didn't want his parents' happy reunion to last only a few dozen years, so he had to at least get his parents to cross into the Flower Blossom tier. After he became a god, having the time to find divine medicine to refine it into a divine pill, he would make his parents become gods in a single step. The interaction with the 3 girls was more harmonious by the day, and although they didn't have very intimate contact, their feelings deepened by the day. Contrarily, Zhu Xian'er didn't dare to let Ling Han hug her after that bulging bone, and even blushed after glancing at Ling Han's lower body, threateningly beautiful. That night, after Ling Han finished cultivating and rested on his bed, he soon let out a quiet breathing sound. Even if he crossed into the Flower Blossom tier and transcended mortals, sleep was still the fastest and the best way to recover physical fatigue. Even if he didn't sleep for half a month, he could still be full of energy, but he would nonetheless sleep on schedule every night. However, that night was somewhat unquiet. Ling Han opened his eyes abruptly and discovered that the window moved a little as 2 people wielding swords wormed in. The moonlight was clear and distinct, reflecting the chilling glare on the blade. Thieves? Ling Han sneered inwardly. To steal from him, were they seeking death? Just as he was about to attack, he was startled. With his eyesight, he could clearly perceive things even in the dark night, so he naturally saw how these 2 people looked. He actually recognized these 2 thieves. He snorted intentionally and sat up on the bed. Shwa, shwa. 2 swords were mounted on his neck, and a girl's voice sounded. Don't move, or else I'll take your life. Sister, don't frighten him. What if this guy's skittish and screams out loud in fright? Another girl's voice sounded. This scene was truly seemingly familiar. "You shut up," the elder sister reprimanded. The younger sister snorted, still unconvinced. She was quite reasonable. Ling Han laughed and said, "Don't worry. My nerves are quite big. I won't scream." The sisters were startled. They had certainly seen people with big guts, but to this degree, it was truly rare. "You're way too collected. Don't you know that 2 swords are mounted on your neck?" Hong. At this time, a loud bang came from outside, and a powerful voice sounded. "Those 2 inside, get the hell out." Ling Han sighed and said, "Tell me, who you guys tried to assassinate and failed again, provoking others to hunt you guys down?" "Huh, how did you know we're assassins?" the younger sister said, surprised. "You guys still haven't recognized my voice?" Ling Han was speechless. Were these sisters even fit to be called assassins? The younger sister hurriedly lit up the oil lamp, swaying it before Ling Han's face, and couldn't help but shout "Mommy" as she pointed at Ling Han. She said, "It's you. Why are you here? I've seen a ghost." These assassin sisters were obviously Lu Feng Heir and Lu Ru Heir, who failed to assassinate Suku Xian and left with Yun Shuang. Thinking about it now, they were certainly from the Fire Country. But it was just too coincidental bumping into them in a country so big. Ling Han laughed and said, "No need to care about why I'm here. How do we take care of your matter? We have to trouble young Master Han again to hide us sisters," Lu Feng Heir said with a smile. This youngster was so calm and collected, completely unlike a teen, making her feel an indescribable sense of safety. "TSK. We don't even know whom you offended and ran to such a remote town for refuge, yet you still want to protect us?" Lu Ru Heir was as before, uncomfortable without saying a few provoking words. Ling Han curled his lip and said, "Well, I'm truly sorry. Please go wherever you came from." "Cheap, I was just saying. Do you really have to be so serious?" Lu Ru Heir pouted. "Seriously? Whom did you guys offend this time?" Ling Han sighed. Lu Ru Heir instantly looked self-satisfied and said, "We tried to assassinate Fire Country's significant minister, Na Jiyen. WW. What sort of weird name is that?" Ling Han interjected. "Na Jiyen. A dirty man actually named such a sissy name." Lu Ru Heir seemed to have found mutual understanding with him, her face filled with approval. "That's right, like I said, this person's name is terrible." Lu Feng Heir was speechless and said, "The name doesn't matter. The key is that Na Jiyen suddenly appeared in the recent half a year and became Fire Emperor's most highly regarded. He bewitched Fire Emperor to mine an extremely strange mineshaft. Every time the workers returned from mining, they die suddenly on the second day. However, Fire Emperor didn't give up and assembled manpower from all over the country, excavating that mineshaft. Whoever dared to disobey would be killed. Now, countless people in the country are frightened, so we're killing Na Jiyen to exterminate an evil for the country. Tisk, being assassins, you still get a feeling of nobility?" Ling Han said with a smile. "Don't you look down on us. We do have 3 no-kills," Lu Ru Heir said proudly. "Don't kill kids, don't kill the old, and don't kill those who do good." Ling Han nodded as he smiled and said, "And then what? You guys tried to assassinate Na Jiyen and ended up failing and being chased for 10,000 miles? Lu Ru Heir pouted and said, "Can't you estimate us a bit grander? Like after we successfully assassinated him, then successfully broke away from the chasing soldiers." "Hee. What does hee mean?" Lu Ru Heir stuck her hands on her hips and appeared extremely discontent. Hong. A heavy sound came from the outside. A house was probably torn down. That voice from earlier sounded again. "The Imperial Guard's handling affairs. We can react first and report later. If everyone in this town isn't at the town's east gate in 15 minutes, the rest will be killed." Ling Han nodded and said, "Looks like Na Jiyen certainly is quite spoiled. An assassination attempt was made on him, and he actually sortied the Imperial Guard to chase the culprit. Hung. There are 7 high-level spiritual ocean tier warriors chasing us. Thankfully, we were quick-witted. Running away quickly," Lu Ru Heir said proudly. Young Master Han. Zhu Wuzhou's voice sounded from outside the door. Ling Han pondered and said, "Dismiss and suitably teach those people a lesson, but no need to kill." Yes. Zhu Wuzhou accepted the orders and left. He was now at the third layer of the spiritual pedestal tier and refined the heavenly luck stone. His battle prowess rocketed to 11 stars, and he definitely belonged to the elite in the fire country. Ling Han, however, sighed. With this disturbance, looks like the Ling family had to move again. These sisters truly caused nothing but trouble for him. Hey, your little attendant can settle those Imperial guards outside? Those are high-level spiritual ocean tier warriors. Lu Ru'er said in disbelief. Don't make a fuss. Ling Han pressed his hand in gesture and said thoughtlessly, "How's Yun Shuang? Unbelievably good. She's a famous entertainer in the Imperial City. Everyone is honored to listen to Lady Shuang play a piece of music. Countless people want to marry her," Lu Ru'er said and looked wickedly at Ling Han, hoping to see a disappointed expression. How could Ling Han possibly care about Yun Shuang? He only recalled her after seeing these sisters and so asked thoughtlessly. In a short while, Zhu Wuzhou returned and spoke by the door. "Young Master Han, the matter's taken care of. Are there any other commands?" Ling Han nodded and said, "Go rest." Yes. Only then did Zhu Wuzhou leave. The sisters' expressions were filled with shock. After a while, Lu Ru'er finally said, Hey, is your attendant bullshitting?" Ling Han shrugged and said, "Can you still hear the dogs bark?" Lu Ru'er was first startled, then finally reacted to Ling Han calling the Imperial guards as dogs, giggling involuntarily, but immediately covered her small mouth with her hands and said, "I really can't hear them anymore." Lu Feng'er's expression was also filled with shock. "Young Master Han, those are high-level spiritual ocean tier cultivators." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "The trouble's taken care of, you guys can leave now. May we never meet again. Encountering you guys is never a good thing. Pa, we aren't bearers of bad luck." Lu Ru'er's expression was full of annoyance, but immediately continued. "Since your attendant is so impressive, why not lend him to us for a few days and help us kill that Na Jiyen?" Ling Han sneered and said, "You have the nerve to say such a thing? Being an assassin to your degree, that's truly embarrassing. TSK, we're exterminating evil for the people." Lu Ru'er grabbed onto Ling Han and said, "Since you're now in the fire country and bumped into us as luck would have it, it means heaven's ordained so. You need to give it effort." Ling Han declined to comment, but it couldn't be denied that this matter was too coincidental. Of all the places the sisters could run, they ran into his place of seclusion. He stroked his chin. If Fire Emperor was bent on having his way, then no matter where the Ling family moved, they might suffer the Imperial family's coercion to go dig those ores, unless they left the Fire Country. However, what exactly were those mines that would make Fire Emperor act so crazily, personally destroying the basis of this country? Ling Han asked, "Do you guys know what mineshaft that is?" "We don't know. We only know that strange ores can be dug out every day and sent to the Imperial family." Lu Feng'er shook her head. A shred of curiosity welled up in Ling Han. For a person like Ling Han, once his curiosity was piqued, it couldn't be stopped. He certainly thought it strange. Those who entered the mineshaft, whether or not they'd ever cultivated before or if their cultivation was high or low, would definitely die suddenly on the following day as long they entered, unless one never came out. What sort of power was this? And what effects did the excavated ores have that would make Fire Emperor place such great importance on them, not hesitating to force the citizens to die to excavate it for him? He decided to take a trip to the Imperial City. With his cultivation of the flower blossom tier and battle prowess of 13 stars, who in the entire Rain Country could pose a threat to him? Finding out that Ling Han was headed to the Imperial City, the sisters obviously exulted. But Ling Han didn't bring that powerful subordinate. When only Hunyo followed, they were dumbfounded. "What were you two going to do, sightseeing?" "Young Master Han, will you bring your precious subordinate?" Lu Feng'er suggested. That's right. That's the Imperial City. No shortage of the spiritual pedestal tier elites, and the royal family even has flower blossom tier elites keeping watch, enough to put you in your place within a second. Lu Ru'er said impetuously. Hung, Nyo can fight 10. Hunyo said, unconvinced. The sisters knew that Hunyo was somewhat freakish, but definitely didn't think that this little girl could compare with them, let alone a spiritual pedestal or flower blossom tier warrior. They urged Ling Han to bring Zhu Wujiu along. I said no need, Ling Han said smilingly. With a snap, he said, let's go. The sisters were helpless and could only set out, believing that after Ling Han bumped into a nail, he would still return to bring Zhu Wujiu. At the worst, it was just making one more trip. The four set out, hastening towards the imperial city. For Ling Han, this was only a small trip. Hence, he didn't bring Lu Yutong and the others, believing that the matter would be settled within a few days. After a few days, they arrived at the imperial city. Ling Han learned about Na Zhiyan. He was an extremely mysterious person, suddenly appearing half a year ago, then becoming Fire Emperor's favorite, managing the excavation of the mineshaft. Originally, no one took it to heart, but once the excavation began, problems arose. The miners would die suddenly the second day after coming out. After flipping through historic records, they discovered that the mineshaft actually had problems long ago, so it was sealed up, yet it was reopened with Na Zhiyan's suggestion. No one knew exactly what was produced inside the mineshafts, but crimson-red rocks were sent endlessly into the royal palace. Although large amounts of miners suddenly died every few days, drawing the repeated objections of the courtiers, Fire Emperor was bent on having his way. He definitely wouldn't seal the mineshaft, and instead assembled citizens all over the country to enter the mineshaft. First were convicts on death row, then normal convicts, and now those who were caught were sent right to the mineshaft. Those who didn't enter were executed on spot, making the people around the imperial city on edge, living in fear. This Na Zhiyan, who exactly is he, and what is he conspiring? Ling Han couldn't help but be curious, but he decided to first go see the mineshaft. Let's go. We'll bring you to see an old love first. Lu Ru'er grabbed onto Ling Han, bringing him to see Yun Shuang. Yun Shuang was born at Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and so she also walked the old path in Fire Country. She bought an elegant manor in the imperial city and would entertain some nobility, collecting a considerable entry fee. However, don't think of getting intimate with her. She only sold her art and not her body. Her status was rising steadily, and countless people were willing to spend a great amount of money to hear her play a musical piece, verifying an old saying, what could not be acquired was the best. Now, quite a few sons of nobility were going all out to marry this enchanting beauty, fighting openly and maneuvering covertly. All of them were generous, gifting a house today and gifting jewelry tomorrow. Yun Shuang's current possessions were definitely shocking. The four arrived at Yun Shuang's manor. It was built alongside a lake, the environment extremely graceful. Na Zhiyan might have made Fire Country on edge, but for high-level figures, their easy and comfortable lives weren't sent into disorder as they continued to lead a life of debauchery. No surprise there. A long line was already in front of the manor's entrance. Shuang Yun's small manor didn't accept reservations. If you wanted to listen to Shuang sing, you had to come early to line up. However, Lady Shuang also had the habit of sleeping in and would open her doors to greet guests in the afternoon, stringing everyone along. Ling Han nodded. If Forget Not and Pill King Pavilion were handed to Yun Shuang for operation, maybe the business could still have been several times better. What are you guys doing? Line up. Know how to line up. Seeing Ling Han head straight for the entrance, everyone was in a bad mood. The sisters paid no heed and came to the entrance, taking out a black token and dangling it. The old servant at the entrance immediately let them in. Ling Han obviously held Hunyo's hand and followed inside. These made many people displeased and harbor suspicions. A young man entered Lady Shuang's manor, and a man with many women at that. What good could possibly happen? What a beast, even bringing such a small lady. Young Master Han. Shortly after Ling Han entered the manor, Yun Shuang walked over hastily. She was covered in thin clothing and her hair was disheveled. Evidently, she was sleeping, and after knowing Ling Han had come, she immediately ran out. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "Long time no see." Yun Shuang hurriedly nodded, stirred up with tears in her beautiful eyes. For her, Ling Han was her savior who helped her selflessly without seeking reciprocation, unlike other people who targeted her beauty. "Let's go." Hunyo shook Ling Han's hand. Her jealousy was great as usual. Ling Han nodded and said to Yun Shuang, "You're doing well. Keep taking good care of yourself." Yun Shuang couldn't help but be disappointed and said, "Young Master Han won't stay for a while longer? I'm occupied." Ling Han said with a smile, looked at the sisters and went on. "Regarding Na Zhiyan's matter, I have my own plan. You guys do whatever you need to do. Else, if you're chased down once more, I won't intervene again." Tisk, saying it as if you're really impressive. Lu Ruer stuck her tongue out. Ling Han obviously wouldn't argue with the likes of her and left with Hunyo to visit the mineshaft and find Na Zhiyan. He would kill or cripple Na Zhiyan if the man deserved it. He did not want to waste time here. An adult and a child left. Those people outside immediately glared over, appearing extremely unfriendly. "Stop!" A youngster jumped out. 23 or 24 years of age, with the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier cultivation, placed in the desolate north. That was genius level. Ling Han sighed. "Why did people always have to ask for trouble? What's your relationship with Lady Shuang?" that youngster asked, his face full of jealousy. A man entered Lady Shuang's manor alone. Ling Han was the first such case. Although he'd only entered for a short while, and nothing could have happened at all, it still made these men outside burn with jealousy. "None of your business," Ling Han said in a terrible mood. "Step aside, don't ask for trouble." "How arrogant!" That youngster sneered and pulled out the long sword at his hips, shaking it slightly. Its chilling glare was piercing. Daring to be disrespectful towards Bo family's descendant? Die! He brazenly attacked with his sword, venting personal hate under fake righteousness. The sword struck towards Ling Han's vital parts, evidently aiming to take Ling Han's life. "Ha! That's Bo family's 7th young master, known for being domineering." After not seeing Lady Shuang for 3 consecutive days, Bo Yongfeng's mood was terrible to begin with. This guy's hit the muzzle. Bo family's one of the 7 great families in the imperial city, with a spiritual pedestal tier elite keeping watch. Even the royal family has to give some face. So what if they kill someone? It's over for this guy. Everyone discussed animatedly, delighting in Ling Han's misfortune. They were in a bad mood that Ling Han could enter Yun Shuang's manor by himself. They simply didn't have guts like Bo Yongfeng, daring to attack publicly. Xiao, a sword came. The chilling chi was like a sharp saber. Ling Han shook his head. He originally only wanted to teach the other party a lesson, but since this person attacked aiming to take his life, he obviously would show no mercy. With a casual flick of a finger, a forceful gust of wind was fired out, and with a pu, the sword that immediately reversed and pierced Bo Yongfeng's forehead, coming right out the other end. The head was pierced thoroughly, so the person was definitely dead. Bo Yongfeng looked blankly at Ling Han, as if unable to believe that he would die in such a way. 2 streams of blood tears flowed from his eyes as his body fell towards the ground, raising the dust off the ground. Instantly, all voices disappeared, and only the sound of heavy breathing was left. Bo Yongfeng definitely didn't count as an elite in the imperial city, but cultivation of the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier wasn't low, either. Moreover, Ling Han was young, looking 18 to 19 years old, so how strong could he possibly be? However, as it happened, he killed Bo Yongfeng with a single finger. Bo Yongfeng, an outstanding figure amongst the younger generation in the Bo family. Although he pursued carnal pleasures, wasn't this normal for youngsters? Bo family had placed high expectations on this family member that was extremely likely to become a spiritual pedestal tier being. However, it was obviously all void now. Such great nerve to kill even Bo family's young master. This thing was serious. Bo family's rage would shake the entire imperial city. In the manor on the balcony, Yun Shuang and the sisters were watching Ling Han leave, but after seeing this scene they were also shocked, with their small mouths open wide. This guy attacked too viciously, killing the person right away. This guy can stir up trouble better than me, Lu Ru'er muttered. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Anyone else wants to stop me?" Everyone hurriedly shook their heads in unison. Amongst the younger generation, spiritual ocean tier experts hadn't appeared, so no one dared to make an enemy of Ling Han. Killing Bo Yongfeng in one move, everyone obviously assumed that Ling Han was a spiritual ocean tier expert. Based on his age, this was already an overestimation. "Let's go," Ling Han said to Hunyo. "Yes." Hunyo agreed in a clear and bright voice, following behind Ling Han. Everyone could only watch them go, and only after Ling Han left did they realize their backs were covered in cold sweat. They hurriedly dispersed in an uproar. Bo family's young master was killed, so they obviously had to spread the news out. Otherwise, if the murderer escaped, the Bo family might take their anger out on them. "Sister, I just realized, I actually can't see through this guy's cultivation," Lu Ru'er suddenly said. Lu Feng'er also nodded and said, "I'm already at the spiritual ocean tier, but I still can't see through young Master Han's cultivation. Could it be?" The sisters looked at each other and said simultaneously, "The spiritual pedestal tier? That's impossible, young Master Han's only so old. 2 years ago, he was still just at the element gathering tier. How could he now be at the spiritual pedestal tier?" Yun Shuang said in disbelief. "That's right." The sisters shook their heads. This was certainly too ridiculous. We have to go. Bo Yongfeng died here, and if the investigation leads to us, we're doomed." The Lu sisters left hastily. They were fugitives. Ling Han and Hunyo strolled about. Their next target was 15,000 meters east of the Imperial City, the mineshaft which had been exploited thousands of years ago. It had some strange metal ores, but due to an ominous accident, the mineshaft had been sealed long ago. Only in the recent half a year was it reopened. Very soon, Ling Han discovered pursuers behind them, but he didn't pay attention to it. In the small fire country, no one could pose a threat to him. After exiting the city gates, he and Hunyo continued east, and immediately saw a crimson-red mist that covered the sky. It was impenetrable even with Ling Han's eyesight. Ling Han was slightly surprised. "They're very not good, not good." Hunyo shook her head and revealed a vigilant expression. Even Hunyo said so. Ling Han was even more shocked. Hunyo feared nothing in heaven or earth. At that time, she skipped and jumped about inside the demonic chi. But now she actually showed fear. Apparently, this mineshaft was truly something more than met the eye. Looks like he somewhat underestimated Na Jiyen. Clearly knowing that people died here every day, he was still bent on excavating. Could some treasure be buried within the mine? However, looking at the pervasive crimson chi, this probably wasn't a treasure, but an ominous thing instead. A greatly ominous thing. Even more so a reason to go see it. Ling Han nodded. His parents and family were all here. He was afraid that something similar to that of a 1,000-corpse sect conspiracy would happen, making the entire desolate north a land of the dead. The lurking perils had to be eliminated. "Nyo, want to enter the Black Tower first?" Ling Han asked. Hunyo bit on her finger, thinking, and said, "No need for now." In other words, when they really entered the mineshaft or stayed there for too long, even Hunyo would possibly not be able to endure it. Ling Han became even more vigilant, but fortunately, those who entered the mineshaft suddenly died only on the second day they came out. So as long as it wasn't instant death, he could enter the Black Tower and invoke its power to resist whatever threat that would be. He and Hunyo walked towards the mineshaft, but more and more people tailed them and were becoming bolder, no longer in fear of being discovered by Ling Han. When they almost arrived at the mineshaft, 10 people caught up to them. "Halt!" A middle-aged man yelled loudly and caught up in a few large strides. His face was ashen and killing intent filled his gaze. He was Bo Wenlin, Bo Yongfeng's father, and had the cultivation of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. After being informed that his son was killed by someone, he immediately came out chasing. "Killed my son," And still want to walk away from it? He said, clenching his teeth. So what do you want? Ling Han said indifferently. Out to kill. Bo Wenlin said fiercely. A life for a life. Ling Han shook his head and said, if you attack, then it'll be the death of father and son. I'll give you a chance. Leave now. If you attack me, then you'll be seeking your own death. He turned and continued to walk towards the mineshaft. Being glanced at by Ling Han, Bo Wenlin instantly felt a terrible chill well up inside his heart, not daring to attack. He clenched his fists and watched Ling Han go into the distance, involuntarily revealing a grim smile. Everyone knew that entering the mine meant certain death. Well, although he couldn't personally take revenge, the most important thing was the result. He stared at Ling Han to confirm that Ling Han entered the mine and didn't just pretend to do so, taking the chance to slip away.